Good day, lovely viewers. Welcome to Monkey DFIC. We have an exciting story lined up for you today. What if Luffy fought Akainu at Marineford? Your engagement means the world to us. Like, comment, and subscribe to help us grow and bring you more amazing content. Without wasting any time, let's start. Chapter 1, The Tipping Point. Akainu's magma fist tore through Ace's chest, leaving a gaping, charred hole where flesh used to be. Time seemed to freeze on the battlefield of Marineford. Marines and pirates alike stood paralyzed as Portgas D. Ace, 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, son of the Pirate King, slumped forward against his brother's shoulder. Blood dripped onto the ice-covered ground. Each drop echoed in Luffy's ears like thunder. "You promised," Luffy whispered, his voice barely audible over the distant sounds of battle. His body trembled, still supporting Ace's weight. "You promised you wouldn't die." Memories flashed through Luffy's mind, drinking sake cups with Ace and Sabo, laughing on a hilltop, making vows under the endless sky. Ace coughed, blood spilling from his lips. "I'm sorry, Luffy." Something snapped inside Luffy then. Not the breaking of his spirit that should have happened, but something else. Something primal. A dormant power awakening. "Get away from him!" Luffy roared, his voice carrying across the entire battlefield. The air around them crackled with invisible energy. Marines in a 30-foot radius suddenly collapsed, foaming at the mouth. Akainu, who had been preparing to finish both brothers with another magma fist, staggered backward, eyes widening in surprise. Whitebeard, bleeding from dozens of wounds yet still standing like the titan he was, turned toward the commotion. That boy, Marco the Phoenix, soaring above the battlefield, nearly dropped from the sky when he felt it. That's Conqueror's Haki. From the rookie. Luffy gently laid Ace down, his brother's blood smearing across his chest and arms. But instead of shattering into grief-stricken pieces, Luffy's eyes burned with rage as he faced Akainu. You did this." Luffy launched himself forward, his rubber arms stretching back impossibly far. Akainu scoffed. "Fool. Your brother died because of his own bloodline. And you'll die for the same reason." The Admiral's arm transformed into bubbling magma, ready to meet the attack of the rookie pirate head-on. But Luffy's fist, when it connected, carried something unexpected. A black sheen covered his knuckles, the unconscious manifestation of armament Haki. What? Akainu's shock was visible as Luffy's fist slammed into his jaw with enough force to actually snap the Admiral's head back. The hit shouldn't have worked. Logically, a rubber fist against magma should have resulted in Luffy's hand being melted to nothing. But logic had taken a backseat to something more powerful, a brother's fury. "I'm gonna kill you!" Luffy screamed, following up with a barrage of punches that drove Akainu back step by step. Each hit carried that same black coating, protecting Luffy's limbs from the Admiral's deadly heat. Blood trickled from Akainu's split lip. He wiped it away with an expression of pure contempt. "You caught me off guard, boy. It won't happen again." The Admiral's counterattack was devastating, a massive wave of magma that swept toward Luffy like a burning tsunami. The sheer heat vaporized the ice battlefield beneath them, sending up clouds of steam that obscured visibility. Luffy didn't dodge. He couldn't. Ace lay behind him, still breathing but fading fast. So instead, he braced himself, arms crossed before his body. The magma hit him with the force of a freight train. Luffy screamed as the heat seared his skin, but somehow, miraculously, he remained standing. Wisps of black energy flickered across his body like protective armor, fading in and out unpredictably. "Not enough," Luffy gasped, his body smoking. "Not nearly enough to stop me." Across the battlefield, Whitebeard's eyes narrowed. "That kid has the will of D all right," he muttered to himself. Then, louder to his nearby commanders, "Change of plans. Protect Ace's brother at all costs." Marco swooped down, blue flames trailing from his phoenix wings. "Pops, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we're witnessing something the world government fears more than me," Whitebeard said, his massive bicento swinging to clear a path through a dozen marine soldiers. "That boy is about to change everything." Back at the epicenter of the battle, Luffy and Akainu circled each other. Steam rose from Luffy's burns, but determination kept him on his feet. "You're out of your league," Akainu growled. "Just like your worthless brother." The taunt hit harder than any physical blow. Luffy's mind flashed back to their childhood. "Luffy, you're too weak to be a pirate," 10-year-old Ace said bluntly, watching 7-year-old Luffy pick himself up after another failed attempt to defeat his older brother. Luffy's cheeks puffed out indignantly. "I am not. I'm gonna be king of the pirates someday." Ace snorted, spinning his metal pipe weapon casually. "You can't even beat me. How are you gonna beat everyone else in the world?" "I'll just get stronger," Luffy declared with absolute certainty. "Strong enough to protect everyone I care about." Ace stared at him for a long moment before sighing. "You're such an idiot." But later that night, when bandits attacked their treehouse and Luffy stepped in front of a blow meant for a sleeping Ace, something shifted in their relationship. "Why'd you do that?" Ace demanded as they sat by the fire, Luffy sporting a nasty bruise on his forehead. "Because we're brothers," Luffy said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "And I'm gonna get strong enough to make sure nobody ever hurts you." Ace had punched him on the arm, hard enough to make Luffy yelp, but there was something different in his eyes after that. Something like respect. The memory burned brighter than Akainu's magma in Luffy's mind. He had promised to get strong enough to protect Ace. And he had failed. No. He hadn't failed yet. Ace was still breathing. There was still a chance. "I need to get past this guy," Luffy muttered to himself, blood dripping from his knuckles. "I need to get Ace to safety." But Akainu stood like an immovable wall of destruction between Luffy and any hope of escape. The Admiral advanced slowly, each footstep melting the ice beneath him. "The son of dragon," Akainu said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Your bloodline is a blight on this world. Eliminating you both will be a service to justice." Luffy's fists clenched. "You don't know anything about justice. You just like hurting people." Akainu's response was another magma fist, aimed directly at Luffy's head. This time, Luffy dodged, his body bending at impossible angles thanks to his rubber powers. But Akainu had anticipated this, following up with a sweeping kick that caught Luffy in the ribs and sent him flying. Luffy crashed into a wall of ice, coughing blood. His vision swam. He could hear someone shouting his name, Jinbe, maybe. But all he could focus on was Akainu, who was now turning back toward the fallen Ace. "No." Luffy pushed himself up, ignoring the way his body screamed in protest. "Don't touch him." He launched himself forward again, but this time Akainu was ready. The Admiral grabbed Luffy's outstretched arm, his magma hand beginning to burn through the rubber flesh. Luffy howled in agony as the smell of his own burning skin filled his nostrils. But instead of trying to pull away, he used the grip as leverage, swinging his body up and delivering a devastating kick to Akainu's face. The impact was enough to make Akainu release him. Luffy fell back, cradling his severely burned arm, but there was no time to rest. "Gear second," he hissed, his skin flushing pink as steam rose from his body. The technique accelerated his blood flow, amplifying his speed and power at the cost of his stamina, a price he'd gladly pay. Across the battlefield, Whitebeard was cutting a path toward them, his quake-powered attack sending marines flying in every direction. The strongest man in the world had made his decision, the boy would not fall here. Luffy, unaware of the approaching backup, launched into a flurry of attacks that seemed to surprise even Akainu with their speed and ferocity. Gomu Gomu no Jet Gatling. His fists became a blur, pummeling Akainu from multiple angles simultaneously. Each hit still carried that black sheen of armament hockey, manifesting instinctively from Luffy's desperate need to hurt the man who had struck down his brother. For the first time, Akainu found himself genuinely on the defensive. The rookie's attacks were coming too fast to counter all of them, and those that connected actually hurt. It wasn't enough to seriously damage him, but it was unprecedented. Enough games, Akainu growled, slamming both fists into the ground. The battlefield erupted in a circle of magma, creating a hellscape that forced Luffy to leap frantically from one rapidly melting ice chunk to another. The distraction was all Akainu needed to prepare his most devastating attack. Great Eruption. A massive magma fist, easily 3 times the size of his normal attacks, formed above the Admiral's head. With a roar of effort, he hurled it directly at Luffy, who had nowhere left to dodge. Time slowed down for Luffy. He saw the attack coming but couldn't avoid it. Behind him, Ace lay bleeding. Dying. His brother needed him, and here he was, about to fail. No. He wouldn't fail. He couldn't fail. Something unlocked inside Luffy at that moment. It wasn't conscious thought but pure instinct, the awakening of potential that had always existed within him. As the magma fist descended, Luffy threw his arms wide and screamed. The air itself seemed to crack around him. An invisible wave of Conqueror's Haki exploded outward, so powerful it momentarily disrupted Akainu's concentration, causing his magma fist to waver and lose some of its cohesion. It wasn't enough to stop the attack completely, but it created just enough of an opening for what happened next. A massive Bicento blade intercepted the magma fist, accompanied by a shockwave that split the very air. Whitebeard had arrived. That's enough, Sakazuki, Whitebeard growled, his massive frame dwarfing both Luffy and Akainu. Despite his dozens of wounds and the strain of continuous battle, the old pirate radiated deadly power. The boy is under my protection now. Akainu's eyes narrowed. Whitebeard. Your interference only delays the inevitable. Whitebeard glanced down at Luffy, who was struggling to remain standing. Kid, get your brother and go. We'll cover your escape. Luffy looked up at the legendary pirate, tears mixing with blood on his face. But Ace isn't dead yet, Whitebeard said firmly. But he will be if you waste time arguing. The old pirate turned his attention back to Akainu, his Bicento leveled at the Admiral's chest. This reckless pursuit of justice ends now, Sakazuki. As they squared off, Luffy scrambled back to where Ace lay. His brother's breathing was shallow, the wound in his chest still smoking from the magma that had cauterized it even as it tore through vital organs. Ace, Luffy choked out, gathering his brother in his arms. Hang on. Please hang on. Through cracked eyelids, Ace looked up at him. Should've seen that coming, he wheezed. Always had a bad habit of turning my back on enemies. Stop talking, Luffy ordered, tears streaming freely now. Save your strength. A shadow fell over them. Luffy looked up to see Jinbe, battered but determined. We need to get him to a doctor immediately, the fishman said. The submarine crew, Trafalgar Law. He's our best chance. Luffy nodded frantically. Where? This way, Jinbe said, helping Luffy lift Ace. But we'll have to fight through marine lines. Across the battlefield, the clash between Whitebeard and Akainu had reached cataclysmic proportions. Each blow exchanged caused the very island to tremble. The old pirate fought with everything he had, pushing Akainu back step by step, buying precious time. But Luffy, carrying his brother with Jinbe's help, soon faced his own obstacles. A line of marines blocked their path to the harbor where Law's submarine waited. Straw Hat Luffy. A marine vice-admiral stepped forward. Surrender now. There's nowhere to run. Luffy gently transferred Ace's weight fully to Jinbe. Get him to that doctor, he said quietly. I'll clear the path. Before Jinbe could protest, Luffy stepped forward. The strain of the battle with Akainu had taken its toll, his body trembled with exhaustion, burns covered one arm, and blood dripped from various wounds. But his eyes remained clear and focused. Get out of my way, Luffy said, his voice carrying across the battlefield. My brother needs a doctor. The Vice Admiral raised his sword. Orders are to capture or kill. Stand down, pirate. Luffy's response wasn't words but action. He slammed his fist into the ground, activating Gear Second again despite his depleted stamina. Pink steam rose from his body as he vanished from sight, reappearing directly in front of the startled Vice Admiral. Gomu Gomu no jet pistol. The Marine officer flew backward, crashing through his own men like a bowling ball. Luffy didn't stop there, tearing through the Marine ranks with desperate fury. Each soldier that fell was one step closer to saving Ace. This way! Luffy shouted to Jinbe, carving a path through the chaos. Behind them, Whitebeard's battle with Akainu reached a critical point. The old pirate, weakened by his numerous injuries, took a magma fist directly to the chest. But instead of falling, he grabbed Akainu by the throat with his massive hand. You wanted to know the true power of the Gura Gura no Mi? Whitebeard growled, his free hand drawing back. Let me show you. The punch he delivered created a shockwave that fractured the entire battlefield, sending fissures spreading in every direction. Marines and pirates alike struggled to maintain their footing as the very island began to break apart. Akainu, caught directly in the epicenter, was sent flying backward, blood spraying from his mouth. He crashed through several ice formations before finally coming to a stop, his normally immaculate uniform in tatters. The Admiral pushed himself up, magma dripping from his wounded body. Is that all you've got, old man? He spat. Whitebeard's response was a grim smile. Not even close. He turned his head slightly, tracking Luffy and Jinbe's progress. But I don't need to beat you. I just need to keep you busy. Meanwhile, Luffy and Jinbe had almost reached the harbor. But their path was suddenly blocked by a familiar figure, Monkey D. Garp, Luffy's grandfather, standing with his arms crossed. Grandpa, Luffy said, his voice breaking. Please move. The conflict on Garp's face was plain for all to see. The hero of the Marines, torn between duty and family. Luffy, he started, then his eyes fell on Ace's bloodied form. Is he? Not yet, Luffy said desperately. But he will be if we don't get him help. Please, Grandpa. For a long, tense moment, Garp stood immovable. Then, slowly, he stepped aside. I didn't see you, he said gruffly. I was, looking the other way. Relief flooded Luffy's face. Thank you. They rushed past, Garp deliberately turning his back as they passed. But their momentary victory was short-lived. A new obstacle appeared, Admiral Kizaru, his body glowing with the power of the glint-glint fruit. Oh my, trying to escape. Kizaru drawled, light gathering at his fingertip. I'm afraid I can't allow that. A beam of light shot toward them, moving at the speed of light itself, impossible to dodge. Luffy braced for impact, but it never came. Instead, the beam was intercepted by a wall of blue flames. Marco the Phoenix hovered above them, his wings spread wide. Get to the submarine, he called down. I'll handle this flashy bastard. First Division Commander, Kizaru said, seemingly unperturbed. Coming to the rescue. How gallant! Marco's response was to dive directly at the Admiral, their clash creating a brilliant explosion of light and blue flame. With the way momentarily clear, Luffy and Jinbe made their final sprint to the harbor. Law's yellow submarine was visible now, its crew frantically waving them over. Hurry! Bepo, Law's polar bear navigator, called out. Captain says we need to dive soon. They reached the edge of the harbor, but before they could jump down to the waiting submarine, a column of magma erupted directly in their path. Did you think I would let you escape? Akainu's voice carried across the battlefield, filled with cold fury. The Admiral had somehow broken away from his fight with Whitebeard and now stood between them and freedom. Jinbe immediately stepped forward, still supporting Ace with one arm. Go, Luffy-kun. Take your brother and jump. I'll hold him off. But Jinbe, no time for arguments. The fishman thrust Ace toward Luffy. Take him and go. Luffy grabbed his brother, but before he could leap toward the submarine, Akainu attacked. The Admiral's magma fist shot directly toward them, aimed at Ace's unconscious form. I told you, Akainu snarled, the son of the Pirate King dies today. Time slowed down for Luffy. He couldn't dodge, not while holding Ace. Jinbe moved to intercept, but he wouldn't be fast enough. In that split second, Luffy made his decision. He turned his back to Akainu, shielding Ace with his own body. The magma fist connected with Luffy's back. Pain unlike anything he'd ever experienced tore through him, a scream ripping from his throat. The smell of his own burning flesh filled his nostrils. Luffy! Jinbe's horrified shout seemed to come from very far away. Through the haze of agony, Luffy held on to one thought: he wouldn't let go of Ace. No matter what, he wouldn't let go. The attack should have gone straight through him, just as it had with Ace. But somehow, impossibly, it didn't. The black armor of Haki that had been flickering unpredictably across his body had manifested at the crucial moment, just enough to prevent the magma from penetrating completely. Still, the damage was catastrophic. Luffy's back was a mess of charred flesh, the wound deep enough to expose glimpses of bone. But he was still standing. Still holding Ace. Still conscious. Impossible, Akainu muttered, genuine shock in his voice. Luffy's head turned slowly, his eyes meeting Akainu's. There was something different in those eyes now, a hardness that hadn't been there before. The innocence of the rookie pirate was burning away, replaced by something older. Deadlier. I won't let you touch my brother again, Luffy said, each word dripping with resolve despite the pain racking his body. Then, summoning the last of his strength, Luffy leaped backward off the edge of the harbor, still clutching Ace to his chest. They fell toward the waiting submarine, Jinbe diving after them a moment later. Akainu rushed to the edge, magma pooling around his feet, ready to launch another attack, but he was suddenly yanked backward by a massive hand gripping his shoulder. Your fight is with me, Sakazuki, Whitebeard growled, blood running freely from dozens of wounds. And it's far from over. As they clashed again, Luffy, Ace, and Jinbe splashed into the water near Law's submarine. The crew rushed to pull them aboard, shocked by the severity of their injuries. Get them inside. Law ordered, already assessing the wounds with clinical precision. We need to dive now. As the submarine's hatch closed and the vessel began to submerge, Luffy's consciousness finally gave out. His last thought before darkness claimed him was a silent promise to his brother. I won't let you die, Ace. Not today. Not ever. On the battlefield, chaos continued to reign. The clash between Whitebeard and Akainu had reached apocalyptic proportions, their powers reshaping the very landscape of Marineford. But something had fundamentally changed. The execution of Portgas D. Ace, the world government's primary objective, had been thwarted. And in the process, the world had glimpsed something potentially more terrifying than even Whitebeard's power, the awakening potential of Monkey D. Luffy. In the command center of Marineford, Fleet Admiral Sengoku watched the monitors with growing concern. The plan had been simple: execute Ace, crush the Whitebeard pirates, and demonstrate the absolute might of marine justice. Instead, they were facing a catastrophe. Sir, a communications officer called out, we've received confirmation. The submarine has escaped our perimeter. We've lost track of Fire Fist Ace and Straw Hat Luffy. Sengoku's fist clenched. What about Whitebeard? Still engaged with Admiral Akainu, sir. The battlefield is, well, it's barely recognizable anymore. On the main monitor, they could see the titanic figures of Whitebeard and Akainu locked in combat. Each exchange created shockwaves that rippled across what remained of the ice battlefield. Marine soldiers and pirates alike were being caught in the crossfire, casualties mounting by the minute. This has gone beyond a demonstration of justice, Sengoku muttered. We're looking at potential annihilation. Vice Admiral Tsuru, standing nearby, nodded grimly. Perhaps it's time to consider a tactical withdrawal. Sengoku shot her a sharp look. Retreat? The Marines don't retreat. Not retreat, Tsuru corrected calmly. Strategic regrouping. We've lost our primary objective. Continuing this battle only increases our losses for diminishing returns. Before Sengoku could respond, another voice cut in, a voice that sent chills down the spines of everyone present. Oh my, what a fascinating turn of events. All heads turned to see the imposing figure of Blackbeard, Marshal D. Teach, on one of the secondary monitors. He had somehow breached the battlefield's perimeter with his crew. What is he doing here? Sengoku demanded. No one had an answer. The presence of Blackbeard, the man who had captured and turned over Ace in the first place, added an unpredictable element to an already chaotic situation. On the monitor, they watched as Blackbeard surveyed the devastation with an unsettling grin. Change of plans, boys, he could be heard saying to his crew. Our timing's a bit off. Let's hang back and watch the show for now. Back on the main battlefield, Whitebeard was showing signs of fatigue. The wounds inflicted by squad after squad of Marines, coupled with the devastating attacks from Akainu, were taking their toll. Even the strongest man in the world had limits. Akainu, sensing weakness, pressed his advantage. Your era is over, Whitebeard, he taunted, launching another magma fist. The age of pirates ends today. Whitebeard caught the fist with his bare hand, his palm blackened with hockey but still burning from the contact. My era, he repeated with a grim chuckle. Maybe so. But you're a fool if you think that means piracy ends with me. With his free hand, the old pirate grabbed his bicento and swung it with enough force to create a tremor in the air itself. The attack caught Akainu in the chest, sending him skidding backward. You've seen it yourself, Sakazuki, Whitebeard continued, advancing relentlessly despite his injuries. The next generation is already here. And they're stronger than you could possibly imagine. Akainu spat blood. You mean that rubber brat? He got lucky. Whitebeard's laugh was genuine this time. Luck? No, what you witnessed wasn't luck. It was destiny. His expression turned serious. The will of D has chosen its champion, and all the power of the world government won't be enough to stop what's coming. The admiral's face contorted with rage. Meaningless pirate superstition. Their clash resumed with renewed fury, but elsewhere on the battlefield, strategic shifts were occurring. Marco, having momentarily disengaged from Kizaru, gathered the Whitebeard division commanders. Pops is buying us time, he told them urgently. The plan has changed. Ace is safe for now, our priority is to ensure the old man's legacy continues. Jozu, his diamond form reflecting the chaos around them, nodded grimly. What's the play? Marco's eyes narrowed as he glanced toward where Blackbeard and his crew lurked at the edges of the battle. We secure our escape route and prepare for a fighting withdrawal. And we keep that traitor Teach from interfering. As the commanders dispersed to rally their forces, a new player entered the fray. From the direction of the harbor came the unmistakable pressure of Conqueror's hockey, but not from Luffy or Whitebeard. Red-haired Shanks had arrived. The Yonko strode across the broken battlefield, his crew spreading out behind him. Marines and pirates alike gave him a wide berth, recognizing the potential for even greater destruction if a third major power entered the conflict. At the command center, Sengoku watched with growing resignation. First Whitebeard, then Blackbeard, now Red Hair. This operation is officially beyond salvaging. He reached for the den mushi that would broadcast his voice across the entire battlefield. It was time for damage control. All Marine personnel, his voice boomed across Marineford, this is Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Fall back to defensive positions. Repeat, fall back to defensive positions. On the battlefield, Akainu's head snapped up at the order. What? No. We have them on the ropes. But Whitebeard, despite his grievous wounds, still stood before him like an immovable mountain. And now Shanks approached from the side, his hand resting casually on the hilt of his sword, Griffin. "This battle is over, Sakazuki," Shanks said calmly. "Enough blood has been spilled today." Akainu's face contorted with fury. "This isn't your fight, Red Hair. It became my fight the moment you tried to kill my protégé's brother," Shanks replied, his usual easygoing demeanor hardened into something more dangerous. "Stand down, Admiral. Even you can't take on two Yonko at once." For a moment, it seemed Akainu might defy even the fleet admiral's orders. Magma bubbled around his clenched fists, his body tensed for another attack. But then, with a snarl of frustration, he stepped back. "This isn't over," he promised, his gaze moving between Whitebeard and Shanks. "Justice will prevail." As Akainu withdrew, Shanks approached Whitebeard. The two Yonko regarded each other with a mixture of respect and wariness. "Didn't expect to see you here, Red Hair," Whitebeard said, leaning heavily on his bicento. Blood stained his white coat crimson in multiple places. "I came to end this war," Shanks said simply. "Too much is at stake." Whitebeard's eyes narrowed. "The boy?" "Among other things," Shanks admitted. "The balance of power is shifting faster than any of us anticipated. Today proved that." Around them, both Marines and pirates were disengaging, pulling back to opposite sides of the shattered battlefield. The immediate threat of all-out warfare had subsided, but tension still hung in the air like the calm before a storm. In the distance, Blackbeard watched with calculating eyes. Whatever scheme he had planned upon arrival clearly needed adjustment. With a gesture to his crew, he melted back into the shadows at the edge of Marineford. Whitebeard, seeing this, turned to Marco, who had landed nearby. "The traitor retreats for now," he observed. "But he'll be back when he thinks we're vulnerable." Marco nodded grimly. "We'll be ready, Pops." The old pirate shook his head slowly. "No, you'll be cautious. My time is growing short, Marco." "Don't say that," Marco protested, but there was resignation in his voice. He could see the extent of Whitebeard's injuries as well as anyone. "The world is changing," Whitebeard continued, his gaze drifting toward the harbor where Luffy's submarine had escaped. "That boy, he reminds me of Roger." "He's something special," Shanks agreed, following Whitebeard's gaze. "Though even I didn't expect him to push Akainu that far." A ghost of a smile crossed Whitebeard's face. "The will of D is a terrifying thing when fully awakened." He turned to face his 1st Division commander. "Marco, gather our forces. It's time we made our exit while we still can." As the Whitebeard pirates began their withdrawal, Shanks maintained his position between them and the regrouping Marines. His presence alone was enough to ensure that neither side would restart hostilities. In the Marine Command Center, Sengoku watched the exodus with a heavy heart. "The casualties?" he asked quietly. "Still being tallied, sir," a junior officer reported. "But preliminary estimates suggest significant losses on both sides." Sengoku nodded grimly. "And all for what? Ace escaped, Whitebeard still stands, and we've revealed our full military might without achieving our primary objective." Garp, who had been unnaturally quiet throughout the final confrontation, spoke up from where he sat in the corner. "Maybe it's for the best." All eyes turned to him in shock. "How can you say that?" Sengoku demanded. "Your own grandson nearly caused our downfall today." Garp's weathered face remained impassive. "I said it might be for the best. I didn't say it was good for the Marines." He stood up slowly. "This absolute justice Akainu preaches. Is that really what the Marines should stand for? Killing a young man for the crime of being born?" "Careful, Garp," Sengoku warned. "That sounds dangerously close to insubordination." The hero of the Marines shrugged. "Maybe I'm just getting old. Or maybe seeing my grandsons fight for their lives today gave me some perspective. He headed for the door. I'll be helping with the rescue operations if anyone needs me. As Garp left, an uncomfortable silence fell over the command center. Nobody wanted to acknowledge the uncomfortable truth in his words. Miles away from Marineford, deep beneath the waves, Trafalgar Law worked feverishly to save Ace's life. The operating room of his submarine was awash in blood as he used his Op-Op-No-Mi powers in ways he'd never attempted before. His heart's failing, Law muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. The magma damaged too much tissue. Beside him, his crew assisted as best they could, but none had his medical expertise or devil fruit abilities. Can you save him, Captain? Beepo asked anxiously. Law's tattooed fingers moved with surgical precision as he literally held Ace's heart in his hands, using his powers to repair tissue that would normally be beyond saving. I don't know, he admitted through gritted teeth. The damage is extensive. But... He glanced through the operating room window to where Luffy lay unconscious in the adjacent chamber, his own wounds bandaged but still critical. But that idiot went through hell to save his brother, Law continued, a new determination hardening his features. So I'm damn well going to try. Hour after hour passed as Law pushed his devil fruit abilities to their limits. The submarine continued its underwater journey, putting as much distance as possible between them and Marineford. Finally, exhausted and drained, Law stepped back from the operating table. I've done all I can, he announced to his waiting crew. The rest is up to him. Beepo looked at Ace's still form. Will he make it, Captain? Law pulled off his blood-stained surgical gloves with a weary sigh. If he were anyone else, I'd say no. But I've learned not to underestimate the will to live in people with that D in their name. He gestured to the adjacent room. How's Straw Hat? Stable, but still unconscious, Penguin reported. His injuries are almost as bad as his brother's. Law nodded thoughtfully. Keep them both monitored. Alert me immediately if either one's condition changes. He headed for the door. I need to clean up and rest. Using the Op-Op-No-Mi at that level takes a lot out of me. As Law left, Beepo moved to check on Luffy. The young pirate's face was contorted in pain even in unconsciousness, his hands occasionally twitching as if still fighting. He really did the impossible today, Penguin said quietly, joining Beepo at Luffy's bedside. Taking on an admiral like that. Beepo nodded. Captain seems interested in him. Can you blame him? Straw Hat's either the craziest or the bravest pirate I've ever seen. Penguin adjusted one of Luffy's bandages. Maybe both. In the next room, Ace's eyes suddenly fluttered open. For a moment, he stared at the ceiling in confusion, trying to piece together what had happened. The last thing he remembered was Akainu's fist tearing through his chest, the searing pain, Luffy's devastated face. Luffy, he tried to sit up but fell back with a gasp of pain. Beepo and Penguin rushed in at the sound. Fire Fist is awake. Beepo called out. Someone get the captain. Ace grabbed Beepo's arm with surprising strength for someone who'd been at death's door. My brother, he rasped. Where's Luffy? He's here, Penguin assured him quickly. He's alive, but injured. You both barely made it out. Relief washed over Ace's face, followed quickly by confusion. But how? Akainu's attack should have killed me. Law returned, alerted by the commotion. It nearly did, he said bluntly. Your heart was damaged, along with your left lung and several other organs. If your brother hadn't gotten you to me so quickly, you'd be dead. Ace processed this information slowly. Luffy saved me. In more ways than one, Law confirmed. He hesitated, then added, he took an attack from Akainu that was meant for you. After you were already down. Horror dawned on Ace's face. How bad? Bad enough, Law said grimly. His back is severely burned. But unlike you, the magma didn't penetrate completely. Somehow, he manifested armament hockey at the crucial moment. Ace fell silent, his expression unreadable. After a moment, he asked quietly, "Can I see him?" Law considered this request. "You shouldn't move yet. Your wounds could reopen." "Please," Ace said, and there was something in his voice that brooked no argument. With a sigh, Law nodded to his crew. "Move his bed next to Straw Hat's. But be extremely careful." Minutes later, the beds had been positioned side by side in the larger chamber. Ace turned his head to look at his unconscious brother, taking in the bandages, the occasional grimace of pain that crossed Luffy's features even in sleep. "You idiot," Ace whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "I was supposed to protect you, not the other way around." Law watched from the doorway, an uncharacteristic softness in his usually calculating gaze. He never gave up, he told Ace. Even when everyone else thought it was hopeless. He kept fighting. Ace's hand moved slowly across the gap between the beds until his fingers brushed against Luffy's arm. "That's who he is," he said softly. "He's always been like that. Too stubborn to know when to quit." As if sensing his brother's presence, Luffy's face relaxed slightly, the pain lines easing. His lips moved, forming a word that was barely audible. "Ace." Across the room, Law made a decision. The alliance he'd been considering, the long-term plans he'd been formulating, might need acceleration. The events at Marineford had changed everything, reshaped the very landscape of the pirate world. And at the center of that change was the sleeping figure of Monkey D. Luffy. "Rest," Law told Ace, moving to adjust his fore. "Both of you need to recover your strength. The world you wake up to might be very different from the one you remember." As the submarine continued its underwater journey, carrying its precious cargo away from the devastation of Marineford, news of what had transpired spread across the world like wildfire. The execution of Portgas D. Ace had failed. Whitebeard still lived, though grievously wounded. And a rookie pirate named Monkey D. Luffy had challenged an admiral of the Marines and, against all odds, escaped with his brother's life. The ripples of that day would soon become waves, and those waves would eventually grow into a tsunami that would reshape the very foundations of the world. Chapter 2, Absolute Justice vs. Unbending Will. Ace woke up to the steady beep of medical equipment. His entire body ached, but the gaping hole in his chest, the wound that should have killed him, felt strangely numb. He blinked, trying to focus on his surroundings. Metal walls. The gentle hum of engines. The subtle sway that came from being underwater. Law's submarine. "You're finally awake," a voice said from nearby. Ace turned his head to see Trafalgar Law sitting on a stool, arms crossed over his chest. Dark circles rimmed the surgeon's eyes, evidence of the hours he'd spent saving Ace's life. "How long?" Ace's voice came out raspy from disuse. 3 days, Law replied, standing to check Ace's vitals. "You died twice on my operating table. I had to restart your heart manually." Memories flooded back, Akainu's magma fist tearing through his chest, the searing pain, Luffy's devastated face. "Luffy." Ace tried to sit up, ignoring the sharp protest from his wounds. "Where's my brother?" Law pushed him back down with surprising gentleness. "Next room. Recovering. Like you should be." "I need to see him." "What you need is to lie still," Law countered. "The only reason you're alive is because I used the Ope no Mi to literally rebuild parts of your heart and lung. Move too quickly and you'll undo all my work." Ace fell back against the pillow, frustration evident on his face. "Just tell me he's okay." Law's expression softened slightly. "He will be. Eventually." He hesitated before adding, "Your brother took a magma fist to the back that was meant for you. After you were already down." Horror spread across Ace's features. "How bad?" "Bad enough," Law said grimly. "Third-degree burns across 40% of his back. If he hadn't unconsciously manifested armament hockey, it would have gone straight through him like it did you. Ace closed his eyes, his hands gripping the sheets so tightly his knuckles turned white. That idiot. He was supposed to run. From what I've gathered about Straw Hat, running from a fight isn't exactly his style. Law checked the drip connected to Ace's arm. Especially not when his brother's life was on the line. Before Ace could respond, the door opened and Jinbe entered. The fishman's massive frame barely fit through the doorway. His torso was heavily bandaged, evidence of his own confrontation with Akainu. Fire Fist, Jinbe said, relief evident in his voice. You're awake. Jinbe, Ace nodded weakly. You got dragged into this too, huh? The fishman approached the bed. I chose to be there. Just as your brother chose to stand against Akainu. Tell me what happened, Ace demanded. All of it. After I. He gestured to the bandages covering his chest. Jinbe glanced at Law, who shrugged. He's stable enough to hear it. The fishman pulled up a chair, the metal creaking under his weight. Your brother changed after you fell. Something inside him awoke. 3 days earlier, Marineford Luffy stood over Ace's fallen form, his body trembling not with fear but with rage. The air around him crackled with energy as his gaze locked onto Akainu. I'm gonna kill you, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Akainu scoffed, magma dripping from his fists. You'll die trying, son of dragon. Luffy launched himself forward with a speed that surprised even the admiral. His fist, suddenly coated in the black sheen of armament haki, connected with Akainu's jaw. The impact actually rocked the admiral back, blood spraying from his split lip. Impossible, someone in the crowd whispered. A rookie just hit an admiral. Akainu wiped the blood away, genuine surprise giving way to cold fury. Lucky punch, he growled, transforming his arm into a river of magma. Great eruption. The massive attack surged toward Luffy, who couldn't, dodge. Ace lay behind him, still bleeding out. What happened next would be debated by Marines and pirates alike for years to come. Luffy threw his arms wide and screamed, not in fear but in defiance. The air itself seemed to ripple outward, an invisible wave of Conqueror's haki so powerful it disrupted Akainu's concentration. The magma attack faltered, just enough for Luffy to leap to the side, grab Ace, and pull him away from the impact zone. Sir, a Marine communications officer shouted to Sengoku from the command center. Straw Hat is displaying multiple types of haki. How is that possible? He's just a rookie. Sengoku's face had gone ashen as he watched the monitors. The will of D, he muttered. It manifests differently in each generation. Across the battlefield, even Whitebeard paused his own battles to watch the confrontation. The strongest man in the world's eyes narrowed as he observed Luffy. Marco, he called to his 1st Division commander. Change of plans. We need to support that boy. Marco landed beside his captain, blue phoenix flames still flickering around his shoulders. Pops. Are you sure? Our priority was Ace, and now the key to saving Ace is protecting his brother. Whitebeard pointed his massive bicento toward where Luffy continued to engage Akainu. That boy just awakened haki that takes most people years to master. If he dies, Ace will have no chance. Back at the center of the battlefield, Luffy was losing ground. His momentary advantage of surprise had faded, and Akainu's experience and power were overwhelming. The admiral pressed forward relentlessly, each magma attack forcing Luffy further back. You fight well for a rookie, Akainu admitted, launching another molten fist. But you're still just a child playing at being a pirate. Luffy dodged the strike but caught a secondary attack to his ribs. He cried out as the heat seared through his vest, branding his skin. Yet somehow, he remained standing. I'm not playing, Luffy gasped, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. I'm going to be king of the pirates. Akainu's face twisted with disgust. King of the pirates? Just like Gold Roger. That title is a symbol of everything wrong with this world. He advanced, each footstep melting the ice beneath him. Pirates steal, murder, destroy. They corrupt everything they touch. And you aspire to be their king? His voice rose, carrying across the battlefield. This is why absolute justice exists. To burn away the cancer of piracy. Luffy wiped blood from his mouth, his eyes never leaving the admiral. You talk too much. The simple dismissal seemed to enrage Akainu more than any insult could have. With a roar of fury, he launched his most devastating attack yet, a hellish wave of magma that transformed the very battlefield into a molten wasteland. Luffy, exhausted and injured, couldn't avoid it completely. The edge of the attack caught his leg, sending him crashing to the ground with a scream of pain. Akainu stood over him, magma fist raised for the killing blow. This ends now. You, your brother, and the corruption you represent, all of it burns today. The fist descended, only to be intercepted by an enormous blade wreathed in trembling air. That's enough, Sakazuki, Whitebeard growled, pushing the admiral back with the force of his Bicento. Akainu's eyes narrowed. Whitebeard. This doesn't concern you anymore. Fire Fist Ace is as good as dead. As long as the boy draws breath, this war continues, Whitebeard replied, positioning himself between Luffy and the admiral. He glanced down at the young pirate. Can you move, boy? Luffy struggled to his feet, his burned leg trembling beneath him. Yeah. Then get your brother and go. We'll cover your escape. Luffy hesitated, looking from Whitebeard to where Ace lay bleeding several yards away. But this isn't a debate, Whitebeard snapped. Marco. The 1st Division commander swooped down, blue flames trailing from his phoenix wings. I've got him, Pops. Take the brothers to safety, Whitebeard ordered. And tell Jinbe to escort them to that yellow submarine at the harbor. The surgeon aboard is their best chance. As Marco moved to help Luffy retrieve Ace, Akainu attacked again. You won't escape, son of dragon. Whitebeard intercepted the magma fist with his bare hand, Haki turning his skin black as obsidian. Even so, the contact seared his palm. Your opponent is me, Sakazuki, he snarled. And I'm more than enough for you to handle. Wait, Ace interrupted Jinbe's retelling. Whitebeard faced Akainu directly. To save me and Luffy? Jinbe nodded gravely. The old man changed strategy when he saw what your brother was willing to do, what he was capable of doing. But there's more. While Whitebeard engaged Akainu in direct combat, Marco helped Luffy retrieve Ace's unconscious form. The 1st Division commander's face was grim as he assessed the severity of Ace's wounds. We need to move fast, he told Luffy. This wound. He shook his head. I've seen what Akainu can do. Your brother's internal organs are severely damaged. Luffy gathered Ace in his arms, ignoring his own injuries. Just tell me where to go. The harbor, Marco replied. There's a submarine, I know, Luffy interrupted. The guy with the spotted hat. I saw him earlier. Marco nodded. Trafalgar Law. Former North Blue rookie, now making waves in the Grand Line. He's got a devil fruit that might just save Ace. They began making their way toward the harbor, with Marco clearing a path through marine forces. But their progress was soon halted by a brilliant flash of light that materialized directly in their path. Oh my, trying to escape. Admiral Kizaru drawled, light gathering at his fingertip. I'm afraid I can't allow that. Marco immediately stepped forward, his arms transforming into brilliant blue wings. Go, Straw Hat. I'll handle this flashy bastard. But, Luffy started to protest. No time to argue. Marco's entire body erupted into phoenix flame. Get Ace to that submarine. As Marco engaged Kizaru in a blinding clash of light and flame, Luffy continued toward the harbor. But his path wasn't clear for long. A line of vice admirals formed a blockade, weapons drawn. "Straw Hat Luffy," one called out. "Surrender Fire Fist Ace and stand down." Luffy gently set Ace down behind a chunk of debris. "Watch him for a minute," he told a nearby Whitebeard pirate. Then he turned to face the Marines, cracking his knuckles. "I don't have time for this. Gear second." Pink steam rose from his body as he activated his technique. The air around him shimmered with heat. The vice admirals braced themselves, but nothing could have prepared them for Luffy's speed. He vanished from sight, reappearing behind their line. Gomu Gomu no Jet Gatling. His fists became a blur, striking with such speed they seemed to multiply. The Marines, caught unprepared for this level of assault from a rookie, fell like dominoes. Luffy didn't wait to see if any would rise again. He rushed back to Ace, scooping his brother up once more. "Hang on, Ace. Just a little further." As he resumed his sprint toward the harbor, the battlefield around them descended further into chaos. Whitebeard's clash with Akainu had grown to cataclysmic proportions, their powers reshaping the very island of Marineford. Marines and pirates alike scrambled to avoid being caught in the crossfire. "Straw Hat," a voice called out. Luffy turned to see Jinbe fighting his way toward him. The fishman was covered in wounds but still moving with impressive speed. "Let me help," Jinbe said, reaching Luffy's side. "I know the fastest path to the harbor." Together, they navigated the chaos, Jinbe clearing obstacles while Luffy carried his brother. They had almost reached their destination when a wall of ice suddenly formed in their path. "That's far enough," Admiral Akiji said calmly, stepping through his own ice barrier. "I cannot allow you to escape with Fire Fist Ace." Jinbe immediately stepped forward. "Go, Luffy-kun. I'll hold him off." But before either could act, a massive hand gripped Akiji's shoulder. Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp, hero of the Marines, stood there with an unreadable expression. "Garp-san," Akiji said, surprised. "These pirates must not." "Enough," Garp interrupted. His gaze shifted to Luffy, then to the bloodied form of Ace in his arms. For a moment, the legendary Marine seemed to age before their eyes. "They're my grandsons, Kazan." Akiji's eyes widened. "Sir, with all due respect, I've spent my life serving justice," Garp continued, his voice heavy. "I've captured more pirates than anyone in marine history. I've bled for the world government." He looked down at his hands, weathered by decades of battle. "But I won't stand by and watch my grandsons die. Not today." A tense silence fell between them. Then, with a deep sigh, Akiji stepped aside. "I didn't see which way they went," he said quietly. "That's what I'll tell Sengoku, anyway." Garp nodded once, sharply. His eyes met Luffy's. "Go," he said gruffly. "And don't look back." Luffy stared at his grandfather, emotions warring on his face. "Grandpa. Just go." Garp roared, turning away. "Before I change my mind." Luffy and Jinbe rushed past, continuing toward the harbor. Garp remained standing with his back to them, shoulders rigid, every inch the marine hero, except for the tears that slid down his weathered cheeks. They had almost reached the submarine when the ground before them erupted in magma. Akainu, bloodied but unbowed, had somehow broken away from his fight with Whitebeard. "Did you really think I would let you escape?" the Admiral snarled, his entire body radiating heat and killing intent. Luffy froze, eyes widening. He had seen firsthand what Akainu could do, the evidence was bleeding out in his arms. Jinbe immediately positioned himself between them and the Admiral. "Luffy-kun, get to the submarine. I'll hold him off." "But Jinbe, no arguments." The fishman thrust his palms forward, using fishman karate to send a shockwave of water pressure at Akainu. "Go." Luffy turned to run, but Akainu was too fast. The Admiral dodged Jinbe's attack and launched a magma fist directly at Ace's unconscious form. "The son of Gold Roger dies today." Akainu roared. Time slowed to a crawl for Luffy. He couldn't dodge, not while carrying Ace. Jinbe moved to intercept, but he wouldn't be fast enough. In that split second, Luffy made his decision. He turned his back to Akainu, shielding Ace with his own body. The magma fist connected with Luffy's back. Pain unlike anything he'd ever experienced tore through him, a scream ripping from his throat. Luffy! Jinbe's horrified shout echoed across the harbor. Through the haze of agony, Luffy held on to one thought: he wouldn't let go of Ace. No matter what, he wouldn't let go. The attack should have gone straight through him, just as it had with Ace. But somehow, impossibly, it didn't. The black armor of Haki that had been flickering unpredictably across his body had manifested at the crucial moment, just enough to prevent the magma from penetrating completely. Still, the damage was catastrophic. Luffy's back was a charred ruin, the wound deep enough to expose glimpses of bone. But he remained standing. Still holding Ace. Still conscious. Impossible, Akainu muttered, genuine shock in his voice. Luffy's head turned slowly, his eyes meeting Akainu's. There was something different in those eyes now, a hardness that hadn't been there before. I won't let you touch my brother again, Luffy said, each word dripping with resolve. Then, summoning the last of his strength, Luffy leaped backward off the edge of the harbor, still clutching Ace to his chest. They fell toward the waiting submarine, Jinbe diving after them a moment later. The last thing Luffy saw before darkness took him was Akainu's face, contorted with rage and disbelief, as the submarine hatch closed between them. Ace stared at the ceiling of the submarine's medical bay, trying to process everything Jinbe had told him. The idea of Luffy, his little brother, the crybaby who used to follow him everywhere, standing against an admiral, taking a magma fist meant for him. He shouldn't have done that, Ace whispered. It was my fight. My execution. With all due respect, Law said from where he was checking Luffy's vitals in the next bed, that's not how your brother saw it. Ace turned his head to look at Luffy. His brother lay unconscious, breathing steady but shallow, his back covered in thick bandages where Law had treated the worst of the burns. Can I see him? Ace asked. Up close. Law hesitated, then nodded. Briefly. And don't try to sit up on your own. With Jinbe and Law's help, Ace was carefully moved to a chair beside Luffy's bed. The effort left him dizzy and nauseated, his body protesting any movement, but he didn't care. He needed to be next to his brother. Gently, he took Luffy's hand in his own. You idiot, he said softly. I'm the big brother. I'm supposed to protect you. Luffy remained unconscious, but his fingers twitched slightly in Ace's grasp. He'll wake up soon, Law said. His physical wounds are severe, but his will to live is remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. Ace nodded, not trusting himself to speak. After a moment, he asked, what happens now? The Marines will be hunting us both. We're heading to Amazon Lily, Jinbe answered. Boa Hancock has granted us sanctuary there. It's one of the few places the Marines won't follow, at least not immediately. And after that? Law and Jinbe exchanged glances. That depends, Law said carefully. On a lot of factors, including how the rest of the world reacts to what happened at Marineford. Ace frowned. What do you mean? Law pulled out a newspaper from his coat pocket and handed it to Ace. The headline screamed in bold type, Marineford disaster, execution fails, Whitebeard lives, Marine headquarters in ruins. Below was a photo that made Ace's blood run cold, Luffy standing over his fallen body, facing down Admiral Akainu with a look of pure rage that Ace had never seen on his brother's face before. The whole world was watching, Law explained. Den Mushi broadcast everything. Your brother just became the most talked about pirate in the world. Meanwhile, thousands of miles from the submarine, Akainu stood in the ruins of what had once been Marineford's main plaza. Marine workers scurried around him, beginning the enormous task of rebuilding, but the admiral paid them no mind. His attention was fixed on a single point on the horizon, in the direction the yellow submarine had disappeared. "Sir," a junior officer approached hesitantly. "Fleet Admiral Sengoku requests your presence in the War Council." Akainu didn't acknowledge the messenger, his fists clenching so tightly that magma dripped between his fingers, sizzling as it hit the ground. "Sir," the officer repeated nervously. "I heard you," Akainu finally replied, his voice low and controlled. "Tell Sengoku I'll be there shortly." As the messenger hurried away, Akainu remained motionless, replaying the events of the battle in his mind. How had a rookie pirate, a child really, managed to stand against him? How had Straw Hat Luffy manifested haki that should have taken years to master? More importantly, how had he failed to execute the son of Gold Roger? Absolute justice had been thwarted. The message they'd intended to send to the world, that no pirate, regardless of lineage or affiliation, could escape marine judgment, had been turned on its head. Instead, the world had witnessed a rookie pirate challenging an admiral. They'd seen the son of Dragon protecting the son of Roger. They'd watched as the old order failed to prevent the rise of a new one. Unacceptable. Akainu finally turned away from the horizon, his face set in grim determination. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Straw Hat Luffy had just moved to the top of his list, a threat to be eliminated at any cost. In the Fleet Admiral's office, the atmosphere was tense. Sengoku sat behind his desk, looking older than ever. Around him stood the remaining admirals, Kizaru and Akiji, along with Vice Admirals Garp, Tsuru, and several others. "The casualty reports are still coming in," Sengoku said wearily. "But preliminary numbers suggest we lost over 1,000 Marines. Hundreds more injured, many critically." "And the pirates?" Akiji asked. "Similar losses, possibly higher. But that's hardly the point." Sengoku slammed his fist on the desk. "This operation was meant to demonstrate Marine strength and justice. Instead, we've suffered the most humiliating defeat in decades." The door opened, and Akainu entered. The tension in the room immediately thickened. The admiral's uniform was torn and blood-stained, but he stood ramrod straight, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Sakazuki," Sengoku acknowledged. "We were just discussing the fallout from today's events." "Failure," Akainu corrected bluntly. "Call it what it is. We failed to execute Fire Fist Ace. We failed to eliminate Whitebeard. We failed to uphold justice." Garp, who had been uncharacteristically silent, stirred at this. "Is that what this was about? Justice? Or was it about sending a message, using my grandson as an example?" Akainu's gaze shifted to the hero of the Marines. "Your grandson? You mean the son of the revolutionary dragon? Or perhaps Fire Fist Ace, son of Gold Roger? Those boys represent everything we've fought against for decades. They're pirates, yes," Garp admitted. "But they're not their fathers." "Bloodline is destiny, Garp," Akainu replied coldly. "The evil of the father flows in the veins of the son. That's why Roger's bloodline needed to be extinguished. That's why dragon spawn is equally dangerous." "That's enough," Sengoku interrupted before Garp could respond. "What's done is done. Our priority now must be damage control." Tsuru, ever the voice of pragmatism, spoke up. "The world is watching how we respond. We can't appear weak, but neither can we afford to seem desperate. I suggest we frame this as a strategic withdrawal, not a defeat." Sengoku nodded. "Agreed. We'll release a statement indicating that while the immediate objective wasn't achieved, significant damage was inflicted on the Whitebeard pirates, weakening one of the four emperors considerably." "And what about Straw Hat Luffy?" Akainu demanded. "The longer he remains free, the more his legend will grow. We need to eliminate him, now, before he becomes an even greater threat." Kizaru raised an eyebrow. My, so serious about one rookie? He got lucky, that's all, lucky. Akainu's voice dropped dangerously. He manifested multiple forms of haki in the middle of battle. He took a magma fist to the back and remained standing. That's not luck, that's the awakening of something we can't afford to ignore. Akiji, who had been silently observing until now, finally spoke. Sakazuki has a point. Straw Hat demonstrated abilities far beyond what his bounty or known history would suggest. The question is, what created that sudden growth? The room fell silent as everyone considered the question. It was Garp who finally answered, his voice heavy with both pride and resignation. The will of D, he said simply. All eyes turned to him. You all know the legends, Garp continued. The D in their names isn't just a letter, it's a marker of something older than the world government itself. Something that even the five elders fear. Superstition, Akainu scoffed. Is it? Garp challenged. Gold Roger had it. Dragon has it. Teach has it. And now we've seen what happens when AD is pushed to his absolute limits, power emerges that defies rational explanation. Sengoku sighed deeply. Whether or not we believe in such things, the fact remains that Straw Hat Luffy and Fire Fist Ace are now symbols. Their escape from Marineford will inspire pirates across the world. Then we find them and kill them, Akainu stated flatly. No symbols, no inspiration. It's not that simple, Tsuru countered. Reports indicate they're on Trafalgar Law's submarine, likely heading for shelter in the New World. Finding them won't be easy. I don't care how difficult it is, Akainu insisted. Absolute justice demands their elimination. Sengoku raised a hand to silence further debate. For now, our focus must be on rebuilding Marineford and restoring marine morale. We'll increase the bounties on both Straw Hat and Fire Fist, but we won't divert significant resources to hunting them specifically. Not yet. Akainu looked ready to object, but Sengoku continued, that's an order, Admiral. There will be time enough to deal with the D brothers later. Right now, we need to present a united front to the world. The meeting continued, shifting to logistics of reconstruction and redeployment of forces. But Akainu's mind remained fixed on a single thought: Straw Hat Luffy had become more than just another pirate to be eliminated. He had become a symbol of defiance against absolute justice itself. And for that, he would pay. Days later, news of the Marineford disaster had spread across the world. In taverns and town squares, people gathered around newspapers, discussing the implications of what had transpired. Did you see the photos? A man asked in a crowded bar in Water 7. Some rookie kid took on Admiral Akainu face to face and lived to tell about it. That's Straw Hat Luffy, another patron replied. I heard stories about him even before this. They say he punched a celestial dragon right in the face at Sabaody. No way. It's true. My cousin's friend was there. Said the kid didn't even hesitate, just walked up and decked him. Similar conversations were happening across the Grand Line and beyond. The narrative was shifting. What had begun as a demonstration of the world government's power had instead become a story of rebellion and unlikely heroism. In a small bar on a remote island in the New World, the red-haired pirate Shanks smiled as he read the latest newspaper. So you finally made your move on the world stage, he murmured, touching the straw hat he wore, the same hat he had once given to a young boy with impossible dreams. Luffy. Captain, Ben Beckman approached, a serious expression on his face. Intelligence reports that both the Marines and Blackbeard are likely to pursue Luffy and Ace aggressively after this. Shanks nodded, his smile fading. I expected as much. It's too soon, he's not ready for this level of attention yet. He stood, decision made. Set course for Amazon Lily. It's time we paid Hancock a visit. Are you sure that's wise? Beckman asked. Interfering directly could complicate matters further. Shanks' hand moved to the 3 scars that marked his left eye. I made a bet on the new generation, Ben. I'm not about to let that bet fail because the Marines pushed too hard, too fast. His voice hardened with resolve. Luffy needs time to heal and grow stronger. We'll make sure he gets it. In the hidden base of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon stood before a wall of den mushy screens, each showing different footage from the Marineford battle. His focus was on one image in particular, his son, standing protectively over Ace, facing down an admiral with unwavering determination. He's growing faster than anyone could have predicted, Sabo commented, standing beside his leader. The young revolutionary's hands clenched as he watched the footage of Luffy taking Akainu's attack. I should have been there. Dragon shook his head slightly. Your presence would only have complicated matters further. Besides. A rare, small smile crossed his normally stoic face. He handled it remarkably well on his own. Not entirely on his own, Koala pointed out from where she was reviewing reports. Whitebeard's intervention was critical. True, Dragon acknowledged. But it was Luffy who changed the course of that battle. Whitebeard saw it, that's why he altered his strategy to support him. Sabo studied the frozen image of Luffy, trying to reconcile this determined young man with the crybaby little brother he remembered. What now? The Marines will hunt him relentlessly after this. Now, Dragon said, turning away from the screens, we accelerate our plans. The world is shifting faster than anticipated, and we need to be ready. He glanced back at the image of his son one last time. Luffy has unwittingly created an opportunity we cannot waste. Back on the submarine, Luffy finally began to stir. His eyes fluttered open, immediately searching the unfamiliar room until they landed on Ace, who was dozing in a chair beside his bed. Ace, Luffy whispered, his voice raspy from disuse. Ace's eyes snapped open. For a moment, the brothers just stared at each other. Then, ignoring the pain it caused, Ace leaned forward and pulled Luffy into a careful hug. You reckless idiot, Ace choked out, tears streaming freely down his face. Why would you do that? Why would you risk everything for me? Luffy returned the hug weakly, mindful of both their injuries. Because you're my brother, he said simply, as if that explained everything. And in Luffy's mind, it did. The door opened, and Law entered. Seeing Luffy awake, he moved quickly to check his vitals. About time, he said dryly. I was beginning to think you'd sleep through the entire journey. Luffy blinked at him. Who are you again? Law's eyebrow twitched in annoyance. The person who saved both your lives, Straw Hat Ya. Oh. Luffy grinned, the familiar expression at odds with his heavily bandaged state. Thanks. Law rolled his eyes, but there was a hint of amusement beneath his exasperation. How do you feel? Any numbness? Difficulty breathing? I'm hungry, Luffy declared. Really, really hungry. Ace laughed, the sound surprised out of him despite the gravity of their situation. Some things never change. Your appetite returning is actually a good sign, Law admitted. But you need to take it easy. Both of you suffered life-threatening injuries. Full recovery will take time. Luffy tried to sit up, only to gasp in pain as the movement pulled at the burns on his back. Ow ow ow. I just said take it easy, Law snapped, gently but firmly pushing him back down. The magma burned through several layers of muscle. Even with my abilities, healing that kind of damage requires time. But my crew, Luffy started. Are not here right now, Law finished for him. According to Jinbe, they were scattered before the battle at Marineford even began. Luffy's face fell. Oh. Right. Ace squeezed his brother's hand. Hey, you'll find them. First, you need to heal. Law checked Luffy's bandages, his expression clinical but his touch surprisingly gentle. We're headed to Amazon Lily. Boa Hancock has offered sanctuary there while you recover. Hancock? Luffy perked up. She's nice. She helped me break into Impel Down. Law and Ace exchanged surprised glances. You know Boa Hancock? Ace asked. The pirate empress? One of the 7 warlords. Yeah. She kept trying to marry me for some reason. Law nearly dropped his medical instruments. Marry you? The most beautiful woman in the world wanted to marry you? Luffy shrugged, wincing as the movement pulled at his wounds. Yeah, but I told her I'm not interested in getting married. I'm going to be king of the pirates. Ace stared at his brother with a mixture of disbelief and resigned acceptance. Only you, Luffy. Only you could reject a marriage proposal from Boa Hancock without a second thought. Law finished his examination and stepped back. Both of you should rest. We'll reach Amazon Lily by tomorrow. Once there, you can continue your recovery on land. After Law left, the brothers sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, Ace spoke, his voice low and serious. Luffy, I need to know. Why did you come after me? Why did you break into Impel Down, challenge Marineford, risk everything? You could have died. You almost did. Luffy looked at Ace as if the question was the strangest thing he'd ever heard. Because you're my brother. That's not, you would have done the same for me, Luffy continued, cutting off Ace's protest. You almost did, taking that magma fist. Ace fell silent, unable to argue with that simple truth. Besides, Luffy added with a small smile, I made a promise, remember? That I'd get strong enough to protect the people I care about. His smile faltered. I almost wasn't strong enough. If Whitebeard hadn't stepped in. But you stood your ground against an admiral, Ace pointed out. Do you have any idea how incredible that is? Most pirates run their entire lives without ever directly confronting someone of Akainu's level. Luffy's expression turned uncharacteristically serious. It wasn't enough. I still needed help. I still couldn't save you on my own. Luffy. I need to get stronger, Luffy said, determination hardening his voice. Much stronger. So that next time, I won't need anyone to step in. Next time, I'll be the one protecting everyone. Ace studied his brother's face, seeing something there he'd never noticed before, a maturity and resolve that went beyond Luffy's usual stubborn determination. Marineford had changed him. The boy who'd set out to sea with nothing but dreams and a straw hat was evolving into something more. You will be, Ace said softly. But you don't have to do it alone. That's what having Nakama means. Luffy nodded, but there was something in his eyes that told Ace his brother's mind was already racing ahead, planning, calculating what he needed to do next. The door opened again, and this time Jinbe entered, carrying a tray of food. His usually stoic expression softened at the sight of Luffy awake. Luffy-kun, he said warmly. It's good to see you conscious. Jinbe. Luffy's mood immediately brightened. Food. The fishman chuckled as he set down the tray. Not as much as you'd probably like, but Law insists on starting with smaller portions. As Luffy attacked the food with his usual enthusiasm, albeit slowed by his injuries, Jinbe turned to Ace. How are you feeling, Fire Fist? Better, Ace admitted. Still like I got a hole punched through my chest, but better. Jinbe nodded, then his expression grew serious. There's something both of you should know. The events at Marineford, they've changed things. The world is watching closely to see what happens next. Ace frowned. What do you mean? I mean that you two are now at the center of a storm that's been brewing for decades, Jinbe explained. The Son of Gold Roger and the Son of Dragon, both defying execution, both challenging the world government directly, it's unprecedented. Luffy paused in his eating, a rare thoughtful expression crossing his face. So people are talking about us? People are doing more than talking, Jinbe confirmed. Pirates across the world are seeing your actions as inspirational. Marines are viewing you as the highest priority threats. And everyone in between is wondering what this means for the future of the seas. I didn't do it to inspire anyone, Luffy said, resuming his meal. I just wanted to save Ace. Intentions don't always match impacts, Luffy-kun, Jinbe replied gently. Whether you meant to or not, you've become a symbol of defiance against the world government. Ace ran a hand through his hair, his expression troubled. So what you're saying is we're bigger targets than ever. Yes, Jinbe didn't sugarcoat it. But you're also potentially more influential. That power cuts both ways. Luffy finished his food and leaned back carefully against his pillows. Doesn't change anything for me. I'm still gonna find my crew and become king of the pirates. Jinbe smiled at the simple determination. I expected nothing less. He turned to leave but paused at the door. By the way, there's something else you should know. Your actions at Marineford didn't just save Ace. They've sparked something larger. What do you mean? Ace asked. Reports are coming in from across the Grand Line. Pirates who had accepted marine dominance are raising flags again. Islands that had reluctantly submitted to world government control are questioning that arrangement. It's subtle for now, but growing. Jinbe's expression was solemn but tinged with something like hope. People are beginning to wonder, if one rookie pirate could stand against an admiral for what he believed in, what might they be capable of? After Jinbe left, Luffy and Ace sat in thoughtful silence. I didn't ask for any of that, Luffy finally said. No one ever does, Ace replied. That's not how the world works. We make choices based on what matters to us, and the world decides what those choices mean. He looked at his brother with newfound respect. But I'll say this, Luffy, if anyone can handle that kind of pressure, it's you. Luffy grinned, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I just want to find my crew. And you will, Ace assured him. But first, we both need to heal. And then. His expression hardened. Then we need to prepare. Because Akainu won't stop coming for us. Not ever. In a dimly lit room somewhere in the New World, Marshal D. Teach, Blackbeard, studied the newspaper accounts of Marineford with calculating eyes. Interesting, he mused, fingers tracing the image of Luffy confronting Akainu. Very interesting indeed. His crew watched warily. Blackbeard's interests had a way of becoming dangerous obsessions. We missed our chance to take Whitebeard's power, Lafitte observed carefully. Blackbeard laughed, the sound sending chills down his crewmates' spines. A temporary setback. The old man is on his last legs, his time will come. And Straw Hat? Shiryu asked, cigarette smoke curling around his face. He's become quite the celebrity overnight. Straw Hat Luffy, Blackbeard rolled the name around his mouth like he was tasting it. Monkey D. Luffy. The will of D shows itself again. He stood abruptly, his massive frame casting long shadows in the lantern light. Change of plans, boys. Our path to the top just got more complicated, but also more interesting. What are you thinking, Captain? Van Augur's quiet voice cut through the silence. Blackbeard's grin widened, revealing the gaps in his teeth. I'm thinking we need to keep a very close eye on the brothers. Fire Fist and Straw Hat just became the most important pieces on the board. You're not going after them now? Burgess asked, sounding disappointed. Patience, Blackbeard counseled. The fruit ripens before the harvest. He tapped the newspaper, his finger landing on Luffy's image. This one has potential I didn't see before. The question is, how to best exploit it. As his crew discussed strategies, Blackbeard turned to the window, gazing out at the starless night. His plans had been disrupted, true, but he'd always been adaptable. The game had changed, but the goal remained the same. Power. Dominance. The top position. And if Straw Hat Luffy was emerging as a wild card in that game, well, Blackbeard had always enjoyed a challenge. Aboard a marine battleship far from Marineford, Admiral Akainu stood at the prow, gazing into the distance. His uniform had been replaced, his wounds treated, but the fury burning within him remained undiminished. A junior officer approached hesitantly. "Admiral, sir. We've received reports that the yellow submarine was spotted heading toward the calm belt." Akainu didn't respond immediately, his mind replaying the moment when Straw Hat had taken his magma fist and somehow remained standing. The shock of it still rankled. "Sir," the officer prompted nervously. "Set course to intercept," Akainu ordered. "And contact headquarters. I want all available intelligence on Amazon Lily." "Sir, Fleet Admiral Sengoku ordered that we return to Marineford for—" "I know what Sengoku ordered," Akainu cut him off, his voice dangerously calm. "And I'm countermanding that order. The trail is fresh, and I will not allow the sons of Roger and Dragon to escape justice." The officer paled. "Why yes, Admiral. Right away." As the man hurried off, Akainu returned his gaze to the horizon. Memories of his own past surfaced unbidden, the island of O'Hara burning, scholars pleading for mercy, the utter certainty that what he was doing was right. Absolute justice brooked no compromise. Evil bloodlines could not be allowed to continue. The sons of the world's greatest criminals could not be permitted to inspire a new age of piracy. This time, Akainu murmured to the empty air, "There will be no interference. No Whitebeard. No Shanks." His fist transformed to magma, glowing ominously in the gathering dusk. Just justice. Absolute and final. The yellow submarine surfaced just off the coast of Amazon Lily, the island of women shrouded in mist and mystery. On the beach, a welcoming committee had assembled, led by the pirate empress herself. Boa Hancock paced anxiously, her legendary beauty unmarred by her evident concern. "Are they here? Is Luffy here? Is he all right?" Her sisters, Sandersonia and Marigold, exchanged knowing glances. Their normally haughty and cold sister had been beside herself with worry since receiving news of the Marineford battle. "The submarine is surfacing now, sister," Marigold reported. "And yes, according to our scouts, Luffy is aboard. Injured but alive." Relief washed over Hancock's face, quickly replaced by determination. "Prepare the palace medical facilities immediately. No expense will be spared for Luffy's recovery." "And his brother?" Sandersonia asked. "Fire Fist Ace is with him, correct?" Hancock waved a dismissive hand. "He can have treatment too, I suppose. He is Luffy's brother, after all." As the submarine's hatch opened, Law emerged first, followed by Jinbe carrying Luffy, whose injuries prevented him from walking unassisted. Beepo and Penguin helped Ace, who was in slightly better condition but still severely wounded. The moment Hancock saw Luffy's bandaged form, she rushed forward, all pretense of dignity abandoned. "Luffy! My beloved!" Luffy, despite his injuries, managed a weak smile. "Hey, Hancock. Thanks for letting us stay here." The pirate empress nearly swooned at being addressed directly, but quickly composed herself. "Of course. You may stay as long as necessary. I've prepared the finest rooms in the palace for your recovery." Law stepped forward. "Thank you for your hospitality, Empress. Both patients require ongoing medical attention. I'll need a proper facility to continue their treatment." Hancock barely spared him a glance. Yes, whatever you need. Just ensure Luffy receives the very best care." Almost as an afterthought, she added, "His brother too, I suppose." As they made their way toward the palace, Luffy took in the island with curious eyes despite his pain. "This place is nice. And you really don't let any men here usually?" "Only you, Luffy," Hancock replied, her cheeks flushing. "You are the exception to every rule." Ace, overhearing this, raised an eyebrow at his brother, who remained oblivious to the Empress's obvious affections. In the palace, they were shown to adjoining rooms that had been hastily converted into medical facilities. Law immediately set about establishing a proper treatment area, directing his crew with brisk efficiency. I need daily checkups for both patients, he instructed. Change the bandages every 12 hours. Monitor for infection. And absolutely no strenuous activity for at least 2 weeks. Luffy, being settled into his bed by Jinbe and several Amazon Lily attendants, immediately protested. 2 weeks. But that's forever. Would you prefer death? Law asked dryly. Because that's the alternative if you reopen those wounds. Luffy pouted but didn't argue further. Across the room, Ace was being helped into his own bed, his expression thoughtful. Doctor, he called to Law. How long until we're fully recovered? Not just well enough to move, but combat ready. Law considered this. For you, at least a month, probably longer. The damage to your internal organs was severe. For Straw Hatya, similar time frame for the back injuries, though he seems to heal faster than any patient I've ever seen. Ace nodded, his expression grim. A month. The Marines will be hunting us actively by then. They're hunting you now, Law corrected. But this island is as safe as anywhere in the world. The combination of its location in the Calm Belt and Hancock's status as a warlord provides significant protection. Once both brothers were settled and Law had completed his examinations, most of the attendants withdrew, leaving just Jinbe, Law, and Hancock. There's something else you should both know, Jinbe said, his voice grave. It concerns Whitebeard. Ace immediately tensed. What about Pops? Is he okay? Jinbe hesitated. He survived Marineford, but his injuries were extensive. According to the latest reports, he's withdrawn to one of his protected territories to recover. Relief flooded Ace's face. Thank goodness. There's more, Jinbe continued. The battle at Marineford has destabilized the balance of power in the New World. With Whitebeard wounded and the Marines damaged, territories are changing hands rapidly. Other powers are moving to fill the vacuum. Like who? Luffy asked, surprisingly engaged despite his injuries. Kaido. Big Mom. And reports suggest Blackbeard is making aggressive moves as well. Ace's expression darkened at the mention of Blackbeard. Teach. That bastard is the reason all this happened in the first place. Indeed, Jinbe agreed. And he's become even more dangerous now. The newspapers are reporting that he's actively recruiting powerful pirates to join his crew. Law, who had been silently observing, spoke up. The New World is being rewritten as we speak. By the time you're both recovered enough to return to the sea, the landscape of power will be significantly altered. Luffy absorbed this information with uncharacteristic seriousness. It doesn't change anything for me. I still need to find my crew and continue to Raftel. And I need to return to the Whitebeard pirates, Ace added firmly. Pops will need every commander at his side during this transition. Hancock, who had been hovering near Luffy's bedside, interjected. You're not going anywhere until you're fully healed, Luffy. I won't allow it. Luffy grinned up at her. Thanks, Hancock. We really appreciate your help. The pirate empress immediately melted into a blushing, stammering mess, much to Law's evident bewilderment. As night fell over Amazon Lily, the brothers were left alone to rest. Ace, unable to sleep despite his exhaustion, turned to look at Luffy in the adjacent bed. Hey, Luffy, he said quietly. You awake? Yeah, came the reply. Too much thinking. Can't sleep. Ace raised an eyebrow. You. Thinking. That's dangerous. Luffy chuckled, then winced as the movement pulled at his wounds. Shut up. I think about stuff sometimes. Want to share what's on your mind? Luffy was silent for a long moment. I was thinking about what Jinbe said. About us being symbols now. Yeah. I never wanted to be a symbol, Luffy said simply. I just wanted to be free. To find the One Piece. To be king of the pirates. I know, Ace replied softly. But sometimes the world decides what you represent, regardless of what you want. It's annoying. Ace couldn't help but laugh at his brother's blunt assessment. Yeah, it is. Another silence stretched between them before Luffy spoke again. Ace, when you were about to, die. Ace supplied. Yeah. What were you thinking about? Ace stared at the ceiling, remembering those moments when he'd felt his life slipping away. I was thinking about my regrets. About Pops, and how I'd failed him. About the crew. He paused. Mostly about you, though. About how I was breaking my promise not to die. Luffy's voice was small when he replied. I was really scared, Ace. Not of Akainu, or the Marines. I was scared of living in a world without you in it. The simple honesty of the statement hit Ace like a physical blow. Luffy. That's why I couldn't let you die, Luffy continued, his voice stronger now. No matter what. Even if I had to fight the whole world. Ace turned his head to look at his brother's profile in the moonlight streaming through the window. The boy he'd grown up with, whom he'd alternately protected and teased, had somehow become this determined young man willing to challenge the most powerful forces in the world for his sake. Thank you, Ace said, the words utterly inadequate for what he felt. For saving me. For not giving up. Luffy turned to meet his gaze, his usual grin spreading across his face despite the bandages and bruises. That's what brothers do, right? Right, Ace agreed, feeling a lump form in his throat. That's exactly what brothers do. As exhaustion finally claimed them both, Ace's last conscious thought was a promise to himself. Next time, he wouldn't need Luffy to save him. Next time, he would be strong enough to stand alongside his brother against whatever the world threw at them. Together, they would face the storm that was coming. And together, they would prevail. Thousands of miles away, in the holy city of Marineford, 5 elderly figures sat around a table, reviewing reports of the Marineford battle with grim expressions. This is unprecedented, one of the 5 elders said, tossing a newspaper onto the table. The execution failed. Whitebeard lives. And worst of all, the world witnessed the Marines' humiliation. More concerning is what they witnessed specifically, another added, pointing to the image of Luffy confronting Akainu. AD challenging an admiral. And not just any D, the son of Dragon. 2 Ds, the 3rd elder corrected. Don't forget Fire Fist Ace. The bloodline of Roger lives on, despite our best efforts. The 4th elder, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Perhaps we should consider that this outcome was inevitable. The will of D has consistently disrupted our carefully maintained order throughout history. Nothing is inevitable, the 5th and oldest elder replied sharply. This is a failure of execution, not destiny. The Marines had every advantage and still could not eliminate 2 pirates. Regardless, the 1st elder said, we must respond decisively. The balance we've maintained for centuries is at risk. The question, the 2nd elder mused, is whether to crush this spark of rebellion immediately, or to allow it to identify others who might rally to their cause. A trap, the 3rd elder asked, interest piqued. Of sorts. The D brothers have become symbols overnight. Many who harbor treasonous thoughts will be watching them, looking to them for inspiration. A cold smile crossed the elder's face. Let them reveal themselves. Then we can eliminate the infection in one decisive strike. The oldest elder nodded slowly. There is wisdom in that approach. But we must ensure the situation doesn't escalate beyond our control. It won't, the 4th elder assured him. We still hold the ultimate power. If necessary, we will not hesitate to use it. Then it's decided, the 1st elder concluded. We monitor the D brothers but do not commit our full resources to their immediate elimination. Instead, we watch who rallies to their cause, who takes inspiration from their defiance. And when the time is right, the oldest elder added, his voice hardening, we remind the world why the world government has remained supreme for 800 years. As their meeting concluded, none of the elders noticed the small den mushy hidden in the corner of the room, its eyes carefully watching, its ears recording every word for a listener far away, a listener with a tattooed face and a revolutionary cause. The ripples of Marineford continued to spread, touching every corner of the world, changing the course of history with each passing day. And at the center of it all, recovering on an island of women, two brothers slept, unaware of just how profoundly they had shaken the foundations of the world. Chapter 3, The Dawn of a New Era. The island of Amazon Lily pulsed with nervous energy. 2 weeks had passed since Luffy and Ace arrived, their bodies broken but their spirits intact. Hancock had converted an entire wing of her palace into a recovery center, with Law overseeing their treatment. Luffy sat on the edge of his bed, testing his range of motion. The burns on his back still hurt like hell, but he could move without feeling like he was being torn apart. Progress. You should be resting, Law said from the doorway, arms crossed over his chest. I've been resting for 2 weeks, Luffy complained. I'm going crazy just lying around. Law approached and examined the healing wounds on Luffy's back. The scarring was extensive, a permanent reminder of Akainu's attack, but the tissue was knitting together better than expected. Your recovery rate is abnormal, Law observed. I've never seen anyone heal this quickly from injuries this severe. Luffy grinned. That's good, right? It's unusual, Law corrected. Like everything else about you. He stepped back. You can start light training tomorrow. Emphasis on light. Push too hard and you'll undo weeks of healing. Luffy pumped his fist in celebration. Finally. How's Ace doing? About the same. His internal injuries were more severe, but he's healing well. Law's expression turned serious. But neither of you is combat ready. Not by a long shot. Luffy's smile dimmed slightly. How long? For full recovery. At least another month. Law gathered his medical supplies. Fortunately, Amazon Lily remains one of the few truly safe harbors in the world right now. After Law left, Luffy made his way to the balcony overlooking the island. Women of all ages bustled about below, many casting curious glances toward the palace where the legendary male pirates were recovering. The door opened behind him, and Ace walked in, moving carefully but steadily. Should you be up? Luffy asked. Ace snorted. Could ask you the same thing. He joined Luffy at the balcony. Traffy gave me permission to move around as long as I don't do anything stupid. Traffy. Law. That's what I'm calling him now. It annoys him. Luffy laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at his healing wounds. The brothers stood in comfortable silence, watching life unfold on the island below. Despite the peaceful surroundings, both felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. Have you thought about what comes next? Ace finally asked. Luffy nodded. Find my crew. Continue to the new world. Become the Pirate King. Simple. Direct. Purely Luffy. You make it sound so easy, Ace said with a small smile. Not easy. But clear. Luffy turned to his brother. What about you? Ace's expression turned troubled. I need to get back to Pops and the crew. With everything happening in the new world, they need every commander. He paused. But I'm worried about you too. I can take care of myself, Luffy protested. Against normal enemies, sure. But Akainu won't stop hunting us, Luffy. What happened at Marineford was personal for him. Before Luffy could respond, a commotion erupted in the courtyard below. Hancock was striding purposefully across the palace grounds, her sister struggling to keep pace. What's going on? Luffy wondered aloud. Minutes later, the pirate empress burst into their room, her face uncharacteristically serious. Luffy, she said, breathless with urgency. A marine fleet has been spotted approaching Amazon Lily. The brothers tensed immediately. How many ships? Ace demanded. 5 battleships. Led by a vessel flying an admiral's flag. Ice spread through Luffy's veins. Akainu? Hancock nodded grimly. It appears he's ignoring both my status as a warlord and the traditional immunity of Amazon Lily. He's coming for you both. How did he find us? Ace wondered. It doesn't matter, Luffy said, already moving to gather what few possessions he had. We need to go. Now. Go where? Hancock asked. You're both still recovering. You can't possibly face an admiral in your condition. Luffy's eyes met Ace's, silent communication passing between them. We don't need to fight him, Luffy said. We just need to not be here. The submarine, Ace realized. If we can get to Law's ship, he's already preparing it, Hancock confirmed. But the harbor is on the other side of the island. You'll need to move quickly and quietly. Hancock snapped her fingers, and attendants rushed in with fresh clothes and supplies. My warriors will create a diversion at the main harbor to draw attention away from your escape route. As they hastily prepared, Jinbe appeared in the doorway. I've scouted the marine fleet, he reported. They're moving into position to blockade the island. We have perhaps an hour before they completely surround us. Luffy pulled on a simple shirt, wincing as it touched his scarred back. Then we move now. I'm coming with you, Jinbe stated firmly. Me too, added a new voice from the hallway. Law stepped in, his nodachi resting casually on his shoulder. My crew is prepping the submarine as we speak. Ace raised an eyebrow. Not that I don't appreciate the help, but why risk yourself, Law? You're not a target, yet. Law's mouth twisted into something between a smile and a grimace. Let's just say I have my own reasons for opposing the world government. Besides, I've invested too much time in keeping you two alive to see my work wasted now. Within minutes, they were moving through the dense jungle that covered most of Amazon Lily, following a hidden path that Hancock assured them would lead to a secluded cove where the submarine waited. Their progress was slower than anyone liked, both brothers were still far from fully recovered, and every jarring step sent pain shooting through their healing wounds. Hold up, Ace said suddenly, raising a hand for silence. Everyone froze, straining to hear what had caught Ace's attention. Then they heard it, branches breaking, underbrush rustling. Someone was moving through the jungle parallel to their path. Marines? Luffy whispered. Jinbe shook his head. They couldn't have landed yet. Law drew his sword fractionally from its sheath. Unless they had scouts already on the island before the fleet arrived. The sounds grew closer. Whoever it was made no attempt at stealth now. Ace raised his hand, flames flickering to life around his fingers, a warning more than an attack, given his weakened state. A figure stepped out of the dense foliage 50 yards ahead, blocking their path. That's as far as you go, a familiar voice called out. Luffy squinted, then his eyes widened in recognition. Rayleigh? Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King, former first mate of the Roger Pirates, stood casually in their path. His gray hair and beard were wild as ever, his glasses reflecting the dappled sunlight filtering through the jungle canopy. You look terrible, both of you, Rayleigh observed with a grin. Though considering what you've been through, I suppose you could look worse. What are you doing here? Ace asked, suspicion evident in his voice. He had complicated feelings about anything connected to his biological father. Helping, Rayleigh said simply. But not in the way you might think. He approached them slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. Running now is the wrong move. Luffy frowned. But Akainu is exactly where you want him, Rayleigh interrupted. Isolated. Overconfident. And walking into a trap. Trap. Law's eyes narrowed. What trap? Rayleigh's smile widened. The one we're about to spring. But I need you to trust me. Trust is earned, Jinbe said cautiously. Indeed it is, old friend. Rayleigh turned his attention back to the brothers. Let me ask you this, do you want to spend the rest of your lives running from Akainu? Or would you prefer to deal with him once and for all? Ace and Luffy exchanged glances. What did you have in mind? Ace asked finally. Instead of answering directly, Rayleigh gestured for them to follow him off the path. Come. There's something you need to see. Curiosity overcoming caution, they followed the legendary pirate through the dense undergrowth until they reached a small clearing. What they saw there stopped them in their tracks. A man sat cross-legged in the center of the clearing, a bottle of sake in one hand and his distinctive red hair bright against the green of the jungle. Took you long enough, Shanks said, taking a casual swig from the bottle. I was starting to think you'd left without saying hello. Shanks. Luffy's face lit up with genuine joy. Beside the red-haired Yonko stood Ben Beckman, Lucky Roo, and Yasopp, the core officers of the Red Hair Pirates. And beyond them. Pops. Ace's voice was barely a whisper. Edward Newgate, Whitebeard himself, sat propped against a massive tree, his bicento resting at his side. His chest was heavily bandaged, but his eyes were alert and focused. Marco stood at his right hand, with Jozu and Vista flanking him. My son, Whitebeard rumbled, his voice weaker than normal but still carrying the weight of his authority. You look like hell. Ace moved forward as if in a trance. What are you doing here? You should be recovering in the new world. As should you, Whitebeard countered. Yet here we both are. His gaze shifted to Luffy. And you, boy. You've caused quite the stir. Luffy approached the legendary pirate without fear. Thanks for helping us at Marineford. I couldn't have saved Ace without you. Whitebeard studied him for a moment, then broke into a grin that transformed his severe features. You've got guts, Straw Hat. I can see why my son thinks so highly of you. Not that this reunion isn't touching, Law interjected, but there's still the matter of a marine fleet approaching with an admiral who wants these two dead. That's being handled, Shanks said casually, taking another drink. In fact, it's the reason we're all here. What does that mean? Luffy asked, confusion evident on his face. Rayleigh stepped forward. It means, Luffy, that sometimes running from a fight is the right move. And sometimes standing your ground is necessary. His expression turned serious. Akainu has made this personal. He won't stop hunting you and Ace, not ever. Not unless he's given a reason to stop. And we're going to give him that reason, Shanks added, rising to his feet. Right now. Understanding dawned on Jinbe's face. You intend to confront him directly. More than confront, Whitebeard said, his voice like rolling thunder despite his injuries. We're going to send a message. One that even someone as obsessive as Sakazuki can't ignore. To Yonko, Law said quietly, calculating the implications. Both here, for this specific purpose. 3, actually, said a new voice from the edge of the clearing. All heads turned to see a massive figure step out of the shadows, Charlotte Linlin, Big Mom herself, flanked by several of her strongest children. What the hell? Ace muttered, instinctively moving closer to Luffy. Don't look so surprised, Big Mom cackled. The balance of power is shifting. We all have a stake in what happens next. This is unprecedented, Jinbe whispered to Luffy. 3 emperors in one place, acting in concert. It's never happened before. Before Luffy could respond, Hancock burst into the clearing, clearly agitated. The Marine fleet has landed forces on the eastern shore. Akainu is leading them personally. Shanks nodded as if this were exactly what he expected. Right on time. He turned to the brothers. Now we have a choice to make. Or rather, you two do. What choice? Luffy asked. Whether you want to face Akainu yourselves, Rayleigh explained, or let us handle him for you. Luffy and Ace exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Then, simultaneously, they turned back to the assembled legends. "He's our problem," Luffy said firmly. "We face him together," Ace added. "But we'll take all the help we can get." Shanks grinned, a flash of teeth in his bearded face. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." He drew his sword, the legendary griffin gleaming in the dappled sunlight. "Then let's give Admiral Sakazuki a proper welcome to Amazon Lily." Akainu strode through the jungle of Amazon Lily, magma bubbling around his clenched fists. A contingent of vice admirals and elite marines followed in his wake, weapons drawn and senses alert. "Sir," one of the vice admirals ventured, "should we be concerned that the Kuja warriors are letting us pass unopposed? It seems suspicious." "They know better than to interfere with absolute justice," Akainu replied coldly. "Even Boa Hancock cannot defy the full might of the Marines indefinitely." In truth, Akainu was also troubled by the lack of resistance. Amazon Lily's warriors were legendary for their strength and ferocity in protecting their homeland from male intruders. Their absence suggested a trap, but Akainu was too committed to his course to turn back now. "Intelligence reports indicate the targets are being treated in the palace," he continued. "We move directly there, eliminate them, and withdraw before any complications arise." "Complications, sir?" Akainu's expression darkened. "Hancock is still technically a warlord. Killing her subjects would create political difficulties." They continued through the dense jungle, the humidity causing sweat to bead on the Marines' brows. Only Akainu seemed unaffected, his internal magma keeping him comfortable despite the oppressive heat. The path suddenly opened onto a wide clearing, with the palace visible in the distance. Akainu paused, instincts warning him that something was wrong. The clearing was too convenient, too exposed. "Hold," he ordered, raising a hand. His men froze, weapons at the ready. For a long moment, there was silence except for the calls of tropical birds and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. Then a figure stepped out from behind a massive tree at the far side of the clearing, a young man in a straw hat, his red vest hanging open to reveal a torso crossed with bandages. "Straw Hat Luffy," Akainu growled, magma bubbling more violently around his fists. A second figure emerged beside the first, taller, shirtless, with the Whitebeard pirate's mark prominently displayed on his back. "And Fire Fist Ace," Akainu's voice dropped to a dangerous register. How convenient. The brothers stood side by side, seemingly unconcerned by the marine forces arrayed against them. Luffy's face bore an uncharacteristically serious expression, while Ace's features were set in cold determination. "This ends today, Akainu," Luffy called across the clearing. "One way or another." Akainu barked a laugh. "You think you can challenge me? In your condition? You barely survived our last encounter, and you had Whitebeard's help then." "Who says he doesn't have help now?" rumbled a voice that sent shock waves through the assembled Marines. The ground shook as Edward Newgate, Whitebeard himself, emerged from the tree line to stand behind Luffy and Ace. His massive bicento gleamed in the sunlight, and despite his obvious injuries, his presence was as intimidating as ever. "Whitebeard," Akainu snarled, genuine surprise crossing his features for a brief moment before he regained his composure. "So you've come to die alongside these criminals?" "Not exactly," said another voice, this one coolly amused. Red-haired Shanks stepped into the clearing from the opposite side, his officers spreading out behind him. "We've come to deliver a message, Sakazuki. One that even you can understand." The Marines shifted nervously, many looking to Akainu for guidance. The sudden presence of two Yonko had changed the calculus of the confrontation dramatically. "If you think I fear pirates, no matter how notorious, you're mistaken," Akainu declared, though a hint of caution had entered his voice. "I am justice incarnate. I will not be deterred. Mama mama mama." A chilling laugh echoed across the clearing as enormous form of Big Mom emerged from yet another direction. "So self-righteous, these Marines. It's quite amusing, isn't it, children?" Several of her sweet commanders flanked her, their expressions deadly serious despite their mother's apparent mirth. Three emperors, one of the vice-admirals whispered, horror evident in his voice. Sir, we should withdraw. Immediately. Akainu ignored him, his focus locked on the brothers who stood at the center of this unprecedented gathering of power. What is this? Some pirate alliance? Call it a statement of intent, Rayleigh said, appearing beside Luffy with casual grace. A demonstration of how the world is changing. Akainu's eyes narrowed. Silver's Rayleigh. Another remnant of a bygone era that should have ended with Roger's execution. And yet here we are, Rayleigh replied with a smile. All of us, remnants, gathered in one place. Makes you wonder what we might have in common, doesn't it? The implication wasn't lost on Akainu. They had gathered specifically for this confrontation, specifically to protect the D brothers. But why? What made these two pirates so important that three Yonko would set aside their rivalries? Whatever game you're playing, it changes nothing, Akainu declared, though with less conviction than before. Straw Hat Luffy and Fire Fist Ace are criminals condemned by the highest authorities. Their execution is non-negotiable. Actually, Shanks said casually, that's exactly what we're here to negotiate. Or rather, Whitebeard added, to inform you of a decision that's already been made. The air seemed to thicken with tension as the three emperors moved forward in unison, forming a loose semicircle around the brothers. Monkey D, Luffy and Portgas D. Ace are under our protection, Shanks stated, all trace of his usual easygoing manner gone. All three of our protections. Attack them again, and you don't just declare war on one Yonko, you declare war on all of us. Akainu's face contorted with rage. You think you can dictate terms to the world government? To justice itself? We're not dictating anything, Big Mom said, her massive form looming. We're simply informing you of the new reality. The world government has always recognized the sovereignty of the Yonko in the New World. This is merely an extension of that arrangement. An extension I will never accept, Akainu snarled, magma beginning to drip from his hands onto the ground, where it sizzled and burned the vegetation. You don't have to accept it, Whitebeard rumbled. You just have to understand the consequences of ignoring it. At this, the officers of all three Emperor crews moved forward, presenting a united front of the most powerful pirates in the world. Marco's phoenix flames flickered around his shoulders. Ben Beckman's rifle gleamed in the sunlight. Katakuri's eyes glowed with menace beneath his scarf. The message was unmistakable, attack, and it would be the last order Akainu ever gave. Throughout the standoff, Luffy and Ace had remained silent, watching the confrontation unfold. Now, Luffy stepped forward. I didn't ask for their protection, he said, his voice carrying clearly across the clearing. But I understand why they're giving it. What happened at Marineford wasn't just about me and Ace. It was about what comes next. His eyes locked with Akainu's. I'm going to be the king of the pirates. That means I have to face people like you on my own terms, not yours. Today isn't that day, I'm not strong enough yet. But that day will come. Akainu's face darkened with fury. You insolent, he's not finished, Ace interrupted, stepping up beside his brother. You should listen. It might save your life. Luffy continued, today, these pirates are protecting us. But there'll come a time when we don't need their protection. When that day comes, if you still want to fight me, fight us, I'll be ready. This isn't a negotiation, Akainu growled. This is a temporary setback. Justice will prevail, boy. It always does. Maybe, Luffy conceded with a shrug. But not your kind of justice. Not today. A tense silence fell over the clearing as Akainu visibly struggled with his rage. The raw power arrayed against him was overwhelming, even for an admiral. To press the attack would be suicide, not just for him, but for every marine present. Finally, with visible effort, he reined in his magma, the molten rock around his fists cooling and hardening. This isn't over, he promised, his voice deadly quiet. Not by a long shot. Of course not, Shanks agreed easily. But for now, you're going to leave this island and report back to your superiors that the situation has evolved. And if I refuse? Akainu challenged, though the question was clearly rhetorical. Whitebeard's laugh was like rolling thunder. Then we settle this the old-fashioned way. Though I don't like your odds, Sakazuki. Not 3-1. For a moment longer, Akainu stood his ground. Then, with a curt nod to his subordinates, he turned on his heel. Withdraw, he ordered. Back to the ships. The Marines began a hasty but orderly retreat, many casting nervous glances over their shoulders at the assembled pirate legends. Only Akainu didn't look back, his rigid posture conveying his fury more eloquently than words ever could. As the Marines disappeared back into the jungle, the tension in the clearing gradually dissipated. Shanks was the first to break the silence, his trademark grin returning. Well, that went better than expected. I thought for sure we'd have to rough him up a bit. Whitebeard snorted. Sakazuki is many things, but stupid isn't one of them. He knows when he's outmatched. For now, Big Mom added ominously. He'll be back, with reinforcements next time. Luffy turned to face the three emperors. Why did you do this? Why help us? Shanks approached him, his expression softening. Because the world is changing, Luffy. What happened at Marineford set events in motion that can't be stopped, only guided. You two have become catalysts, Rayleigh explained. Symbols of a shifting tide. How that shift plays out depends partly on whether you survive long enough to grow into the roles fate has assigned you. Ace frowned. We never asked for any of this. No one ever does, Whitebeard rumbled. Greatness isn't requested, Ace. It's thrust upon those with the will to bear it. Besides, Big Mom added with a calculating smile, your continued existence serves our interests as well. The Marines are off balance, the world government distracted. A perfect opportunity to strengthen our positions in the new world. Luffy's face scrunched in thought. So you're helping us because it helps you? That's how the world works, boy, Big Mom laughed. Pure altruism is a luxury none of us can afford. Not entirely true, Shanks countered, looking at Luffy with genuine affection. Some of us have more personal motivations. Before the conversation could continue, Jinbe emerged from the tree line, Law close behind. The Marine fleet is withdrawing, Jinbe reported. All ships have recalled their landing parties. Good, Shanks nodded. Then our business here is concluded, for now. Whitebeard turned to Ace. It's time for you to decide, my son. Will you return with us to the New World? Your place among the commanders remains open. Ace glanced at Luffy, conflict evident on his face. He's staying with me, Luffy interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. At least until we're both fully recovered. Ace raised an eyebrow. Since when do you decide my future? Since I nearly got myself killed saving your ass, Luffy replied bluntly. Besides, you heard them, we're symbols now, whatever that means. Better to stick together until we figure it out. A slow smile spread across Ace's face. When did my little brother get so smart? Always been smart, Luffy countered with a grin. You just never noticed. Whitebeard laughed, the sound rumbling through the clearing. The boy has a point, Ace. Take the time you need to heal, both of you. The New World will still be there when you're ready. And what about you, Luffy? Shanks asked. What will you do once you've recovered? Luffy's answer was immediate and unequivocal. Find my crew. They got separated before Marineford. I need to get them back together. A captain without his crew is just a man with a ship, Shanks agreed. Or in your case, a man without even that much. The Thousand Sunny is fine, Rayleigh interjected. It's docked safely at Sabaody, waiting for your return. Relief washed over Luffy's face. That's good news. As for your crew, Rayleigh continued, they're scattered but alive. Gathering them will be your first test, a measure of whether you're ready for what comes next. Law, who had been silently observing until now, stepped forward. My offer still stands, Straw Hatya. An alliance. At least until you've recovered your crew. Luffy studied the surgeon thoughtfully. Why? What's in it for you? A small, enigmatic smile crossed Law's face. Let's just say our interests temporarily align. Besides, I've invested too much in keeping you alive to see you die from something as mundane as poor planning. Cheeky brat, Big Mom muttered, eyeing Law with a mixture of amusement and calculation. The surgeon of death offers his hand in friendship. How unexpected. Law ignored her, his focus remaining on Luffy. We both have objectives in the new world. Working together increases our chances of success, for a time, at least. Luffy considered this, then nodded. All right. Alliance accepted. But only until I find my crew. Agreed, Law said, satisfaction evident in his voice. Shanks clapped his hands together. Well. Now that that's settled, I think it's time we all return to our respective territories. The new world won't dominate itself, after all. Indeed, Big Mom agreed, already turning to leave. This little intervention has cost me valuable time. My tea party schedule is completely disrupted. As the emperors prepared to depart, Whitebeard beckoned Ace and Luffy closer. Despite his injuries, the old pirate's presence remained commanding, his voice low but powerful. Listen carefully, boys. What happened today won't stay secret for long. 3 emperors, united in purpose, it's unprecedented. The world will wonder why, and that wondering will lead to speculation, fear, and opportunity. You've bought yourselves time, he continued, but with it comes responsibility. Use this reprieve wisely. Grow stronger. Prepare for what's coming. What is coming? Ace asked. Whitebeard's expression turned grim. War. Not like Marineford, that was a battle. I'm talking about true war, spanning the entire world. The kind that reshapes the order of things. Luffy's brow furrowed. Because of us? Not because of you, Whitebeard corrected. You're just catalysts. The tensions have been building for decades. Your actions at Marineford simply accelerated the timeline. The old pirate placed a massive hand on each of their shoulders. The will of D has awakened in you both. What that means, even I don't fully understand. But I know this, whatever roles you're meant to play in what's coming, you'll need each other to survive it. With that cryptic warning, Whitebeard straightened, wincing slightly at the pain from his wounds. Marco will remain here for a few days to ensure our withdrawal doesn't create an opening for the Marines to return. After that, you're on your own, at least for a while. As Whitebeard rejoined his commanders, Shanks approached the brothers next. His manner was more casual than Whitebeard's, but his words carried no less weight. Luffy, he said, smiling at his protégé. You've come a long way from that kid I left in Fusha village. Farther than I expected, if I'm being honest. I told you I'd become a great pirate, Luffy replied with a grin. So you did. Shanks' smile faded slightly. But the path ahead is even more dangerous than the one behind you. Today we've given you shelter from the storm, but we've also painted an even larger target on your back. We can handle it, Luffy said confidently. I believe you can, Shanks agreed. But remember this, even the king of the pirates needed allies he could trust. Roger had Rayleigh, Gabon, and the rest of his crew. Don't try to carry this burden alone. His gaze shifted to include Ace. That goes for both of you. Pride is a luxury neither of you can afford right now. With that, Shanks departed, his officers falling in behind him. Big Mom had already vanished into the jungle, her massive form somehow moving with surprising stealth. As the clearing emptied, Luffy and Ace found themselves standing with only Rayleigh, Law, and Jinbe remaining. Well, Rayleigh said with a dry chuckle, that was quite the show of force. Not something you see every day, 3 emperors in agreement. Will it actually stop Akainu? Ace asked skeptically. For now, Jinbe confirmed. Even he cannot defy the combined might of 3 Yonko without world government sanction. And the 5 elders are too cautious to risk open war with all 3 simultaneously. So what happens next? Luffy asked. Rayleigh stroked his beard thoughtfully. Next, you heal. Both of you. Then, Luffy, you gather your scattered crew. After that. He shrugged. The future is unwritten. Not entirely, Law interjected. Some parts are predictable. The Marines will regroup. The world government will seek a way to neutralize the Yonko alliance, temporary though it may be. And pirates across the world will react to today's events, some emboldened, others cautious. The new world will be in chaos, Jinbe added. Power vacuums don't last long in those waters. New forces will rise to fill them. Luffy absorbed this information with uncharacteristic seriousness. Then, slowly, his familiar grin spread across his face. Sounds interesting, he declared. Ace groaned, but there was affection in the sound. Only you would look at worldwide chaos and think interesting. Luffy's grin widened. That's why you love me. That's debatable, Ace replied, but he was smiling too. As they made their way back toward the palace, Rayleigh fell into step beside Luffy. There's one more thing, he said quietly, ensuring only Luffy could hear. Something I wanted to discuss with you before all this began. What is it? Luffy asked. Training, Rayleigh said simply. 2 years of it. Intensive, focused, brutal. The kind that would prepare you for the new world in ways your current experience hasn't. Luffy frowned. 2 years is a long time. Yes, Rayleigh agreed. But consider the alternative. You go to the new world as you are now, gather your crew, and then what? You've seen the level of power you'll be facing. Admirals. Emperors. The full might of the world government. I'll get stronger as I go, Luffy argued. That's how it's always worked. And that's been sufficient until now, Rayleigh conceded. But the stakes have changed, Luffy. After Marineford, after today, you don't have the luxury of learning as you go. The next time you face an admiral, there might not be Yonko around to intervene. Luffy fell silent, actually considering the old pirate's words. It was unlike him to delay, to train rather than act. His entire journey had been about moving forward, not stepping aside. Talk to your brother about it, Rayleigh suggested. Take some time to consider. The offer remains open, for both of you, if Ace is interested. With that, Rayleigh picked up his pace, leaving Luffy to his thoughts. That night, a celebration erupted on Amazon Lily. The departure of the Marine fleet, coupled with the unprecedented gathering of legendary pirates, had created an atmosphere of excitement and relief. The Kuja warriors, normally wary of outsiders, embraced the occasion with enthusiasm, their usual restrictions on male visitors temporarily relaxed. Luffy sat cross-legged on a large cushion, devouring plate after plate of food with his customary gusto. His wound still ached, but the day's events had left him more hungry than pained. Ace sat beside him, nursing a mug of ale and watching the festivities with a thoughtful expression. The Whitebeard commanders who had remained behind were engaged in an impromptu drinking contest with some of the braver Kuja warriors, while Law sat apart, observing everything with his usual detached interest. Hey, Luffy said between mouthfuls, Rayleigh offered to train us. For 2 years. Ace raised an eyebrow. 2 years. That's a long commitment. That's what I said. Luffy grabbed another chunk of meat. But he thinks we need it. To be ready for what's coming. And what do you think? Ace asked. Luffy chewed thoughtfully before answering. I think I'm not strong enough yet. What happened at Marineford proved that. You stood against an admiral, Luffy. Few pirates ever managed that much. Yeah, and I nearly died. You nearly died. If Whitebeard hadn't stepped in. Luffy set down his food, suddenly less hungry. I don't ever want to be that helpless again. Ace studied his brother's face, seeing the determination there. So you're actually considering it? Delaying your journey for training? Maybe. Luffy picked up his meat again. What about you? Would you train with us? Ace took a long drink, considering. Pops expects me back eventually. The crew needs all its commanders, especially now. He paused. But he also told me to take the time I need to heal. To get stronger. So maybe 2 years isn't such a crazy idea, Ace admitted. If it means next time we face someone like Akainu, we don't need 3 emperors to bail us out. Luffy grinned. We could train together. Like when we were kids. Except this time, you might actually land a hit occasionally, Ace teased. Luffy's response was to throw a bone at his brother's head, which Ace dodged easily despite his injuries. Seriously though, Ace continued, his expression growing somber. Whatever we decide, we need to be deliberate. The world thinks we're important now, symbols, catalysts, whatever you want to call it. Our choices matter more than they used to. That sounds complicated, Luffy complained. I just want to find my crew and continue our adventure. And you will, Ace assured him. But maybe, just maybe, taking some time to prepare isn't such a bad idea. Before Luffy could respond, a commotion near the edge of the celebration drew their attention. Hancock was approaching, flanked by her sisters and carrying what appeared to be a newspaper. Luffy, she called, her voice carrying over the noise of the festivities. News from the outside world. As she reached them, she thrust the paper into Luffy's hands, her expression a mixture of concern and excitement. It's already happening. The ripples from today's confrontation. Luffy unfolded the newspaper, Ace leaning in to read over his shoulder. The headline blared in bold type, unprecedented. 3 emperors unite to protect D. Brothers. Below was a blurry but recognizable image of Whitebeard, Shanks, and Big Mom standing in a loose semicircle, with Luffy and Ace visible in the background. The Marines must have had a photographer in their ranks, capturing the historic confrontation. That was fast, Ace muttered. The Marines only left a few hours ago. News coups fly at incredible speeds when the story is important enough, Hancock explained. This will be in every corner of the world by morning. Luffy scanned the article, struggling with some of the more complex words but grasping the essential meaning. They're calling us the Catalysts, he said, pointing to a passage midway through the text. What does that mean? It means they think you've started something, Law explained, approaching after noticing the newspaper. Something big. The article speculates that your survival at Marineford, coupled with today's unprecedented alliance of emperors, signals a fundamental shift in the balance of power, Hancock elaborated. They're suggesting that the era of marine dominance may be ending. Ace let out a low whistle. That's going to make us even bigger targets. But it also means you'll have allies, Jinbe pointed out, joining the conversation. Pirates and even whole nations who oppose the world government will look to you as figureheads for resistance. Luffy frowned, clearly uncomfortable with the idea. I didn't ask to be a figurehead. I just want to be the pirate king. The two might not be separable anymore, Straw Hatya, Law said quietly. Not after this. As the implication sank in, Rayleigh appeared at the edge of their group, his expression knowing. Now do you understand why I suggested training? The world has expectations of you now, expectations you're not yet equipped to meet. Luffy looked from the newspaper to Rayleigh, then to Ace, and finally to his own hands, hands that had failed to protect his brother without outside help. After a long moment, he nodded. 2 years, he said finally. If we train with you for 2 years, will we be strong enough to face whatever's coming? To protect the people we care about? Rayleigh's smile was gentle but tinged with sadness. No training can guarantee that, Luffy. But it will give you a fighting chance. And sometimes, that's all you need. Then I'll do it, Luffy decided. He turned to Ace. What about you? Ace stared at the newspaper headline for a long moment. Then, with a resigned sigh, he nodded. I'm in. 2 years. Then we both return to our crews, ready for whatever comes next. It's settled then, Rayleigh said. Once you've both recovered from your injuries, the real work begins. As the celebration continued around them, Luffy and Ace sat side by side, the weight of their decision hanging between them. 2 years was a long time, an eternity in the fast-paced world of piracy. But if it meant the difference between life and death the next time they faced enemies like Akainu, it would be worth it. Hey, Ace, Luffy said after a while. Remember when we were kids, and you always said I was too weak to be a pirate? Ace winced. I was a jerk back then. Yeah, you were, Luffy agreed cheerfully. But you were also right. I was weak. His expression turned serious. I'm not weak anymore. But I'm not strong enough yet either. Not for what's coming. None of us are, Ace admitted. But we will be. He raised his mug. To getting stronger. Together. Luffy grinned and clinked his cup against Ace's. Together. 6 months later, on a remote island far from the shipping lanes of the Grand Line, 2 figures stood atop a cliff face, their bodies battered and bruised but their spirits unbroken. Again, Rayleigh ordered, his voice carrying over the howling wind. And this time, synchronize your haki properly. Feel the rhythm of each other's attacks. Luffy and Ace nodded, determination etched on their faces. Both were shirtless, their bodies showing the results of intensive training, more defined muscle, new scars, and an air of controlled power that hadn't been there before. Ready? Ace asked, flames beginning to flicker around his fingertips. Born ready, Luffy replied, his skin taking on the distinctive sheen of armament haki. They launched themselves at Rayleigh simultaneously, their attacks perfectly coordinated in a way that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. Ace's flames formed a vortex around Luffy's rubber-enhanced punches, creating a spiraling inferno that even the Dark King had to take seriously. Rayleigh blocked and dodged with the fluid grace of a man half his age, but there was approval in his eyes. Better, he acknowledged as they disengaged. Much better. You're starting to fight as a unit, not just as 2 individuals occupying the same space. The brothers grinned at each other, exhausted but satisfied. Their progress had been remarkable, even by Rayleigh's exacting standards. Luffy's haki had developed at an astonishing rate, while Ace had discovered new applications for his flame fruit that he'd never considered before. More importantly, they had learned to fight together, complementing each other's strengths and compensating for weaknesses. Rayleigh had insisted on this aspect of their training, arguing that their greatest advantage lay in their bond as brothers. That's enough for today, Rayleigh decided, noting their exhaustion. Rest. Tomorrow we begin work on advanced observation haki techniques. As they made their way back to the simple hut that had been their home for the past 6 months, Luffy pulled a battered newspaper from his pack. It was several days old, delivered by a news coup that had accidentally flown off course. Anything interesting? Ace asked, collapsing onto his bedroll. Luffy scanned the headlines. More stuff about the new pirate era. Lots of crews making big moves in the new world. He flipped a page. Oh, and there's something about Law. Looks like he's officially become a warlord. Ace raised an eyebrow. A warlord? That's an interesting move for someone who offered to be your ally. He's got his reasons, Luffy said with a shrug. Law always has a plan. What about your crew? Any news? Luffy's expression fell slightly. Nothing specific. Just rumors about individual members being spotted in different places. He folded the newspaper carefully. I miss them. I know, Ace said sympathetically. I miss my crew too. But we made the right call, Luffy. This training, it's already making a difference. Yeah. Luffy brightened. And we've still got another year and a half to get even stronger. Ace groaned. Don't remind me. My muscles already hate you for suggesting this. Me? It was Rayleigh's idea. Which you agreed to. Their bickering continued as darkness fell, the comfortable rhythm of brotherhood unchanged despite the extraordinary circumstances that had brought them to this remote training ground. Outside, watching the stars emerge one by one, Rayleigh smiled to himself. The will of D was strong in both brothers, manifesting in different but complementary ways. Ace's controlled power and tactical mind balanced Luffy's wild instincts and unpredictability. Together, they were becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. The world was indeed changing, shifting beneath everyone's feet like sand in a storm. New alliances formed and fractured daily. The Marines, humiliated by the events at Amazon Lily, had withdrawn to lick their wounds and plan their response. The emperors had returned to their territories, their temporary alliance already fading into uneasy competition once more. And throughout it all, two names continued to appear in newspapers and tavern gossip across the world, Monkey D, Luffy and Portgas D, Ace. The brothers whose defiance at Marineford had sparked a new era. What that era would become, whether a golden age of piracy or the final, devastating conflict between the old powers and the new, remained to be seen. But one thing was certain, when the D brothers emerged from their training, they would be at the center of whatever came next. A new dawn was approaching. And with it, a world transformed. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.